Welcome, everyone, to episode 98 of the Looks Like a Movie podcast. My name's Kevin. I'm here with Owen. No Doug this week.
It's
Probably
a
what is
Douglas
becoming
episode.
Douglas episode, probably becoming a recurring bit that every episode where we talk about Nicole Kidman, Doug is just going to
He's
miss
just a little
now.
shy, he just
Yeah,
doesn't really want.
he just loves her so much. Um, anyway, we're going to be talking about her in Baby Girl. We're also going to talk about Nosferatu, two new releases, and we'll probably do a little bit of catching up on some of the new releases from earlier this month in December, uh, just because we were doing our holiday episodes and we didn't talk about any new releases for a month. But we'll also next week be talking about the whole year, so we'll probably talk about a bunch more movies then. Before we get to that, I want to remind people that our 100th episode is almost here and we're planning something a little bit special. We're going to do a Q&A, and I'm going to have various places for people to send in questions, and this is your first reminder. So once this episode is out, there should also pretty shortly after the episode be a tweet put out that you can just reply under if you want to ask us any questions for us to answer. You can also just comment directly on this episode on YouTube or Spotify. We will check the comments for the episodes as well as next week's episode. You can leave comments on this week's episode, next week's episode. And then also, if you want your question to be completely private from everybody else, you can
Yeah,
email
you're
it
a
to
little
us.
shy.
Yeah, if you don't want it in any comment section or on any tweets, you can email it to us. The email will be in the description, but I could also just say now on the pod, it's just lookslikeamoviepod@gmail.com. You can send your questions there. And that's about it. We could get to what we watched this past long extended week that we have. I should also set the stage for the
Set the
time that we're
stage.
recording this episode, which is that live as we are recording, Owen and I are going head to head in the
Yes.
championship for fantasy football. And
Yeah, Josh
so,
Jacobs just fumbled, so
yeah, I know bad start to his game, but Baker Mayfield also put up 35 fantasy points. So I fear the night might be over before it begins for me. Might be a little bit of hostility on this episode. Maybe some bad blood as we go
Oh,
back and
jeez.
forth on these movies because a lot is at stake tonight for me and
Yeah.
Owen. But
All up to Jerome Ford.
yeah. Well, that's not really who you want it to be up to. I don't think so. That makes me a little more confident. um, anyway, let's talk about what we watched over the past 10 or so days since the last time we recorded. I'm going to leave out some of these new releases that I watched because we'll be talking about those in a minute. But I'll kind of fly through a couple things. I rewatched La Chimera. I'm kind of gearing up for what will hopefully be a successful end of year recap video, and
Yeah.
trying to just like kind of solidify my list. So I wanted to rewatch La Chimera because it was kind of for most of the year been that movie that was like dangling around 5-star territory,
You're
and
just dangling it.
I just talked about it so often, but I had only seen it once, and so I didn't want to be like so
Yeah.
confident that I felt a certain way. And then I rewatched it, and I was like, yeah, I mean, this is just kind of the best thing ever. So that's firmly in like my number 2 spot of the year right now. But the final published list will be available
Yeah,
soon.
TBD.
I got sent a screener of The Last Showgirl, which I think comes out in theaters on January 10th, not too long after this episode comes out. It's good. There's a really good Pamela Anderson performance in the center of it. The movie is kind of a small movie. It's literally like 80 minutes long.
Yeah.
But there's some solid performances, even if it doesn't like quite go to all the places that you want it to. I mean, Batista, another awesome Batista performance, like him just doing these cool, sensitive guys. That's a good one to check out. There's like stuff that I don't even really need to talk about. The Santa Claus was on TV before Christmas. I was like, I
Hey.
didn't even really watch it. I didn't even rate it. But I did also some 2024 like catching up. So I watched Twilight of the Warriors Walled In, one of Doug's favorite movies of the year. It's like a Hong Kong action flick,
Yeah.
and Doug had kind of prior.
He, forced you to watch it.
No, I mean he brought it up a while back, told me I'd like it. It was on my kind of catch up list, but I didn't know if I'd get around to it. And then when I was like kind of picking between movies, I was like, I should give this one a chance before the year ends, and I
Yeah.
am happy that I did. It is super fun. It just like really pulls you into that world so well. Like the world building is so fun, and it all happens in like this walled city, obviously, that is a real life city, that existed, but that they turn into this like kind of fictional locate, or they fictionalize what happens inside it. But But man, the action movies like that, dude, they just like I don't know. It's like it's so hard to compare to like a Hollywood action film because it's just so much cooler in every way. But yeah, I'd really recommend that one. I watched Meet Me in St. Louis or St. Louis, however you say it. A question that I thought would be answered when I watched it, but then they say both pronunciations
Yeah.
of it. So
Yeah.
gorgeous movie though, really cool. I know you also watched it over this
Yes,
span of
I
time.
saw it in
Um,
theaters, and
yeah, that
I
I'm
think
jealous of because I just watched it at home. But
yeah. No, really, really good movie.
yeah, no, I really like that one a lot. I watched The Departed, rewatched The Departed, I should say. It's been a while. Um, I like I've always kind of really liked that movie, but I was never like crazy about it. And then this rewatch, I was just like, man, this shit's good, dude. Like this is kind of like one of his best, which is crazy because but it is
Yeah.
one of those things I feel like with most of his movies where if I rewatch any of them right now, I'd be like, yeah, maybe this is one of the best, and then I'll probably just kind of I don't know, that might just be going on forever, endless cycle. Then some new releases. Obviously, we're going to talk about Nosferatu, Baby Girl. I'm going to talk about Juror Number Two in a couple minutes. I rewatched Gladiator 2 for the third time. Um, that wasn't initially in my plans, at least, but things just happened that way. And
Yeah.
I third watch might have bumped it out of my top 20 list for the year. I don't know. Maybe three times is a little too much. I mean,
Yeah.
because I was kind of there's like some movies right at that like cusp, like the 20 cutoff mark, and it was like I was picking between a couple, and I was like, do I leave Gladiator 2 in? And then watching it a third time, I was like, maybe I put in a different movie. I don't know. We'll see what actually happens, but I still really like it. It's just third time's probably too much for 1 year. I probably need a little bit of a break before I
Yeah.
revisit Gladiator 2 again, probably for a while. Um, that's pretty much it for me. You can take it away.
Okay. So like for a couple days after we recorded the last podcast, I didn't really watch anything because busy with like Christmas stuff. But like I said, I did see Meet Me in St. Louis on 35 in theaters. And then I watched The Shop Around the Corner, which is the Jimmy Stewart, Ernest Lubitsch Christmas movie, which
Yeah,
is
the
like
other Jimmy Stewart Christmas movie.
yeah. I
Did
just
you see
have
that? Did you see that tweet of someone being like, I really like that Jimmy Stewart Christmas movie," and then they were like talking about two different movies.
yeah. No, I still haven't seen the what's that movie called?
It's
It's
a Wonderful Life.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, kind of one
I
of the
haven't
best movies
yeah, I should
ever.
I was like I think it was like 2 a.m. Christmas night. I was like, maybe I'll watch it, and I didn't watch it. Um, so then I watched the new Wallace and Gromit movie, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul.
Right.
Which I grew up watched with the Wallace and Gromit like the first movie, like the classic. But I haven't seen it in maybe 10 years. But I thought this was cute. I think it's one of those kids movies that I think has like a really kind of strong and timely message. It kind of focuses upon like AI,
Right.
which and I think there's kind of almost a bluntness to the delivery of the message that like I think kids can kind of like receive the message and kind of understand it. It kind of you have Wallace like he invents this gnome guy, and
Hmm.
he's like, Gromit, look at this gnome. This gnome is gonna make your life easier, and he's gonna like do all these tasks, and he's inventing all these inventions that are kind of making life easier. And he even invents like this invention that will pat Gromit's head, like the dog, the dog. And it's like
Yeah.
it kind of the end of the movie comes to this realization that you know it's nicer to get the kind of the actual physical contact of patting the head rather than like get it, even though it might be easier to push a button and have the robot pat the head. There's something about that like the actual physical connection that's
Yeah.
better. But yeah, interesting like movie on AI. I recommend checking that one out. It's cute. Stop mo. It's also it kind of it's very ingrained in the text of like a stop motion film to be like about AI and like because you could just
Right.
make like a lot of the animation I think is going to be that whole world is going to change in the next 5 years because of AI and especially something like stop motion is definitely seen as like a tedious thing, but that's kind of a part of it. And there's so much kind of love and time that you have to put into creating something like Wallace and Gromit. and we're kind of entering into an era where stuff like that is seen as like, why would you do that? Because you could just push a button and make something. So I think
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a special little film on that kind of level. Um, and then oh, okay. So I went to the theaters and I saw three of the new releases. Two of them that we're going to focus on this episode, and then I saw a complete unknown,
Yeah.
the James Mangold picture, and I definitely liked that more um, than I expected to. I liked it more than
Yeah,
the
I was
other two.
surprised that that is the movie. I almost feel bad that that's not the movie we're doing an episode
I
on
know.
because it's your favorite one out of all 3 of the
Yeah.
I would not have anticipated that guy. I mean, I don't think any of us would have really anticipated it, which is why we didn't
It
pick
was
it to
kind of one of
be
those things
the
where
topic, but
it has like a low ceiling, but it's like there's so much about it that's kind of like. And
oh,
honestly,
yeah.
I think I was a little surprised with Mangold. I think he does like
Yeah.
enough that's like it's not like
I mean,
there's
sometimes
nothing
he's
like
pretty good.
there's nothing egregious about it, but it's also I think like he ultimately holds the film back, but at the
Yeah.
same time like he keeps it at like a it's like a reasonable quality. I think that's why has a name and he's talked about is because he's gonna bring you he's like really good at working in like the system and like making like a Hollywood movie that's like totally like good. It's like it's fine. Um
Yeah.
and I kind of wrote about it in my review where the movie in many ways is like it's like Bob Dylan's take on Bob Dylan because
Right.
he's like has his script notes and he's writing and he's like editing things and it's also like it's based on a book, right? And it's an interesting like Hollywood artifact of like where's uh James Mangold's voice in all of this? Like, where is he in this movie? Where it's like Chalamet is, evoking Dylan and he has this really strong performance, but it's kind of lacking like a central voice outside of it, like being like just this Bob Dylan biopic. But I think in terms of like Jesus, in terms of like um kind of the like very typical because I think Mangold in many ways created like the what we have today and what we think of as today with Walk the Line. Like he kind of created the blueprint for that, and this is probably the one of the better versions of just like that typical blueprint. But I think it also has it almost like I've talked about it being like too plotty and like plotless at the same time because I think a lot of times it's just like scenes and they're like scenes of like this happened in real life and it's like we're gonna give you this scene and then you'll have a bunch of those scenes that like it's like whatever. But then it's like then they're playing like it's like greatest song ever, and then there's scenes of people acting their ass off, but like it's like they're kind of plotless, but they're also like jamming you with like information and like it's like this is like something that happened in real life and this is kind of important. And then there's like another amazing song. So it's kind of fun in like the way that like if you kind of take it as like none of these like plot points beats like really matter and it's kind of just like they're just kind of you're just kind of hanging out with these characters. I think it's a really good time. But yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. But I do, as someone who likes Bob Dylan, and this cast is pretty good.
Yeah.
I think
How was,
I think
Boyd
it's solid.
Holbrook, everybody's favorite?
Yeah, yeah. So Boyd Holbrook shows up in like it's like an MCU cameo. He- but he's really good. I haven't seen Walk the Line, and I'm not too big of a Johnny Cash fan. But Boyd Holbrook's really good. Elle Fanning is really incredible. Monica Barbaro, I came away with being really like she's kind of incredible. I've seen
Yeah.
her in Top Gun, and she kind of in Top Gun Maverick. She was one of those like she's a side character, and you can kind of like
Yeah.
you're there
But
for
now she gets to
Tom
shine.
Cruise. You're there for Tom Cruise and Glenn Powell, and Miles Teller is there, and
Yeah.
I think she really gets an opportunity to like go toe to toe with one of the great or actors of her generation and Timothy Chalamet and
Yeah.
like really and part of me and I kind of had a lot of like opinions on like how I would make a complete unknown a better movie and I think part of it is like like the I think a really interesting movie to me would be like a movie centered just about the kind of relationships in Bob Dylan's life rather than like him going electric. Like, it's a cool part of the film, but I think, like, if it was, like, less plotty and just more about, like, his difficulty in, like, having like romantic relationships with, or just even like
Yeah.
professional relationships with people, and like kind of this artist, because there's a kind of central plot point of him in between Elle Fanning's character and Monica Barbara's character, and like how he just ultimately like fumbles both of them. And
Yeah.
I think like if it was like less of like this is like, because biopics get really like into like this is the how, like trying to get all these important like factual things into the movie, and if it like leaned more into like the plotless like romance of it, I think it'd be really good. But ultimately, I talked about it kind of Mangold being like more of like a Hollywood studio guy, and the movie being about like this guy with an edge and this artist who's doing what he wants to do, and no one's gonna tell him what to do. And then the movie's kind of pretty, straightforward. Or it's like the message of the movie is like this artist is defying, he's important because he has this edge and because he does it his way. And then the movie kind of is just like it's like a normal movie. So I
Yeah.
wish there was someone who made this movie that had that edge to uh, kind of balance the kind of edge that the story was about. But overall, I was pretty happy with. I think it's pretty fun movie. So then yeah, I watched Baby Girl and Nosferatu. We'll talk about that more on like the
Yeah.
base of the video, and then I just kind of on the Bob Dylan kick. I watched the Don't Look Back documentary,
Mhm.
which is
Oh,
this
you're gonna say the Todd Haynes movie, which I
no,
also
no, no.
wanna watch.
Yeah. Um, I watched it's the Don't Look Back interview, I think is it's like a similar era. I think it's like this of like when the movie actually was, but it's actual, footage, like you're just following
Right.
real Bob Dylan around. And it's almost interesting because I was like, I'm like 100% sure that James Mangold has seen this film. It's like one of the most popular Dylan movies. But like I think there's a clear way like you could take inspiration of the way that this is kind of filmed in this more like kind of 60s documentary style that would have really elevated
Yeah.
the Complete Unknown. But yeah, really, I mean that's a fantastic movie. I want to watch. I know Scorsese has like 200-minute long Bob Dylan movies that look like really fantastic. I know that people really like those movies, so I want to watch those. I kind of made like a Bob Dylan watch list. Um, and like there's like movies that like he's just like in, and they're like weird kind of cult movies that he's in that look fun. And then there's also like these like acclaimed documentaries that look really good.
Right.
And
Uh,
then oh,
no, no,
oh
I was just gonna well, unless you're talking about more Bob Dylan, but I was gonna ask
no,
kind of on the, awards watch thing since I haven't seen the movie. Is Timmy, in your opinion, kind of the, it's like his Oscar to lose, or do you think he has some competition?
um,
Like, are you pretty
I yeah,
confident that he
I'd
could win
like
the Oscar, or do you think it's not as good of a performance as they're saying?
I think that the in terms of well, it's tough because it's like it's an obvious like story. I think for youngest actor,
Yeah.
best actor ever. And I think it's like one of those movies where it's like this is an Oscar movie. Like
Yeah.
you're doing a musical biopic. It's like that's in the past historically done really well in that like at
Yeah.
least with nominations. And I think it in terms of performance, I think it's a really incredible performance. Not only like embodying Dylan, but in terms of him singing the songs live, and they're like really good. Like I
Yeah.
think that's why they're so like Oscar worthy is like because you're not only embodying a real person, but you're also in many cases singing,
Yeah.
which is very impressive. So I would not be surprised if this he walks away with it. I like to see that happen, but I don't know. I think
Right.
yeah, well the movie's also doing like really well. It's like
Mhm.
Searchlight's like, biggest movie ever
Yeah.
basically.
Which is crazy because when I saw the numbers today, I was like, "That's Searchlight's biggest five-day opening," and then
Yeah.
Nosferatu is making, like, almost double what
Yeah.
A Complete Unknown made, so I'm like, "Nosferatu really killing it." I mean, we'll get there in a minute, but still,
Mhm.
I was really surprised because
Yeah.
I
No,
thought at
Searchlight
least
I
that it
mean,
would be the
Searchlight is like
opposite way box office-wise. I really thought the Bob Dylan movie probably had the clearest path
I keep
out of these
seeing
3 to
these,
being
like,
the biggest box
TikToks
office
of
movie,
these, like,
but
25-year-old girls, and they're like about to go to the Bob Dylan movie, and like I'm the youngest person in like the theater, which
Yeah,
is like
that could be it. I guess it
it
doesn't really
has like
appeal
it has
to
like the element of like
a young
Bob
crowd.
Dylan, as much as Timothy Chalamet has tried and really succeeded in like reaching basically every base.
Yeah, he's not really worried about making movies for a specific audience. He's like, I can make Dune Part 2 for young people. I can
Yeah,
make Wonka for even younger people, and now I
yeah.
can make the Bob Dylan movie for even older
Which
people.
is
And
really
like,
tapping
and
into that, like, almost Top
yeah,
Gun Maverick base. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
but yeah, no, I saw it with an older crowd for sure, and I think that's just, like, kind of, you know, there are definitely young people, you know, that are into Bob Dylan, but it's just like, it's one of those things where people who grew up with Bob Dylan are gonna be more inclined
They're
to
gonna
go
watch
see
the
the
Bob
Bob
Dylan
Dylan
movie.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
I'm interested also, I think that might that could definitely, I don't know the age range of the Academy voters, but I assume they lean older than, like, than
Sure,
younger.
yeah.
So I
They're
mean
gonna that's the Academy will like a
yeah,
complete
yeah.
unknown more than the average person our
Yeah,
age
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
So,
Um,
yeah, I think, I'd be interested what if it like, other nominations other than
yeah, it is
Chalamet
kind of
because
one of those like fringe movies in a lot of those categories where it's like
yeah.
mostly kind of like possibly last nominee in a lot of categories. I'd also wonder, I guess, while we're talking about it because you didn't mention it, like Edward Norton because he was kind of the guy
Yeah,
who was like he was like the number 6 in the supporting actor race, and then like recently kind of like the speculation has been that he'll steal the number 5 spot and knock somebody
mhm.
out, but it's like I haven't
Yeah,
heard much about his performance. I don't know,
I
like
think Edward Norton, it's one of those things where it's like he's good in the movie, and it's Edward Norton, like, he has that name value, it's gonna be
yeah,
an Oscar movie, he's good in it, and he has, like, the name, but it's
yeah,
like the performance itself isn't anything, like,
crazy.
remarkable.
Yeah,
I think because I know Elle Fanning got some, like, award or nomination at one of those
right.
award shows. I think in terms of I don't think anyone else is gonna, like, get anything, but I think, like, if they did what I was saying, where it's like, if they committed anyway, like, because I think
It
everyone's
would be
so good in the
Monica?
movie, if they, everyone's so good in the movie, if they just, like, focus more on, like, one relationship, whether it's, like, the
Oh,
Pete
sure.
Seeger relationship or the Elle Fanning, the, Sylvie Russo relationship or the Joan Baez relationship, I think, like, because 'cause they're so good in the movie, but it's like, there's just so many people and there's so many moving parts that it's, like, it's tough to point out a distinctive
Yeah,
performance outside of Timothy because it's kind of an ensemble piece.
yeah,
So it's kind of
that
like who
makes
do you like
sense.
the best? It's like it's kind of it's tough to say because there's so many.
Right,
Uh, so I don't know.
that makes
And
sense.
yeah, but I also my last movie I watched was Clooney Brown, which is a late Lubish. It's his last like solo directed movie. It's really funny. It's a comedy movie, a Lubish comedy with the Lubish touch. It's a really funny
The
movie.
Lubish touch.
Yeah, that's what they say. Um, it's a really funny movie about this young girl, Clooney Brown, who just really loves plumbing. She
Mhm.
loves plumbing. She
Many such
wants to
cases.
many girls in the 40s, they just love plumbing, and there's a dilemma is that no one wants to marry a plumber. They see it
Right,
as,
I
it's too
see.
manly, it's too girls aren't plumbers, right? You can't be a plumber. So she gets caught in these situations where someone needs plumbing help and she's like, "Oh, I'll help you. I love plumbing." And then people look at her like she just like killed their family. Like she's like the worst thing you could do is come and help me with my plumbing as a young lady. So really I mean I really I one of the my favorite performances in like any movie ever is Jennifer Jones as Clooney Brown. I think that's a performance that if I was, making this movie with the lead actress, I'd definitely be like, okay, you gotta check out Clooney Brown because I think it's such a they it's a, they wouldn't there's one of the it's like the John Wayne push in Stagecoach when she first comes in. They open the door and they do a little push in on like, and she just kind of is glowing in the frame there. But it's just a very radiant performance that is super funny. I showed my parents last night and they laugh with it. Really, I gotta watch all of Lubish's films because I think he died in like his 50s and like he had his career through like that like silent period, but they didn't really make it until like So, you had maybe a, 30-year period, but,
Right.
in terms of that period, there's a lot of great movies there, and I really loved, 2 of the movies I've seen from him are, like, instant classics. Those are really
Yeah.
they're really upbeat and fun and kind of they're modern in, like, the kind of pace of it all, but
Mhm.
they're, like, really funny in, like, the way that they're kind of observing life in, like, the '40s. So it's, like,
Yeah.
very they're kind of these movies that, like, the topics they're dealing with, are you couldn't really not you wouldn't really be able to replicate that now because it's just they're so of that era, and I think there's a quality to the comedy that is really fun because of that. And it's almost has this extra level of comedic element because it's like it's just so ridiculous looking back on it. But and even though it's like it's kind of an exaggerated version of the time, and it's like it would be ridiculous kind of back then. It's kind of has a level of like it's even more ridiculous because of time has passed. Like you can imagine just being like a like plumbing is like the worst thing you could do as like a young girl now. It's like it's quite funny.
No, this one looks
But
good. So the 2 you've seen are Shop Around the Corner and Now Clooney Brown?
yes,
I
yes,
see.
yes.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that Shop Around the Corner, watching it for Christmas is what inspired the Clooney Brown watch?
Yeah, well, I've been aware of it, and I knew a lot of people who,
Right.
like it's like when you click Clooney Brown, it's like 5-star across the border. So it's
Yeah.
like and I love, I think Jennifer Jones is oh, yeah, I like Portrait of Jenny, she's in that as well. Jennifer Jones, the lead in Portrait of Jenny, which is a movie I really like, and so I just heard about it, and, there's a bunch of other ones, like Design for Living looks really good. They call that one the OG Challengers. So yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think,
I mean I think I have heard this actually. Now that I look at it, yeah, because 'cause I've been wanting to
yeah.
watch To Be or Not to Be for a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that
Um,
one looks really good, like, a bunch of these look and they're all, like,
yeah,
they're, like, 90, 100-minute, like, really fast-paced comedy movies, so
right.
I definitely can
Yeah.
see myself just, like,
Burning
bumping a
through a
bunch of them
lot of
out.
them.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, they're super fun.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. I mean, before we get to Nosferatu and Baby Girl, I kind of wanted to just like catch up a little bit on December watches, but also I don't know exactly what detail we have to go to for most of these movies. I mean, I guess the first one I'd bring up is Queer, which is a movie that after Doug saw it, he kind of gave his input, and now we've all kind of mentioned it on the pod. And
Yeah, we've dropped
I also do think that it will probably be a hot topic on next week's episode. And so I don't know if we need to go into extreme detail right now.
yeah.
But it is a movie that we didn't get to dedicate a whole episode to. And so if there's like, I guess I don't know exactly what details we touched on when we covered it before, but if there's anything you want to kind of like add
I
in
don't know,
and
I
say
mean,
about it,
we've
that
talked
we
about
didn't
it a decent
really,
amount,
yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies of the year for starters,
yeah.
which is why I was kind of hinting at the fact that we'll talk about it next week. But I mean, we're going to talk about more than just our favorite movies of the year next week. But we'll have all kinds of categories and stuff to discuss. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's just like I've been thinking about it a lot. I kind of when I was going
Yeah,
through trying to I guess like solidify a list of my favorite movies of the year. I was kind of like like rankings are all kind of flexible and like none of it really makes sense. And so as I was trying to like play stuff just for like a video's purpose, I was like, like how much do I bump this down? How much do I bump this up? And then like the thing was, I have my kind of like 3 5 stars this year that like obviously are not going to move spots. And then when I was looking at like the tier just below them of like these are the movies that like if I were to watch it a second time right now, it could be a 5 star. I'm like Queer is right there. Like it's like this is like so close to
yeah.
being one of the just like the best movies I've seen in a while. I really have to like kind of go back in a second time. I don't think any of us have watched it more than once, have we? I think we all only
Mm.
just saw it the one time. And it is like, there's so much movie. So it is like
No,
it
yeah,
is
that's
kind of one of
definitely one
those
that I'd
things that
like to see
I
again.
look forward to
It's
watching
just
again. But
tough with the classic release schedule where it's like
yeah, of course. But I mean, it's just like mesmerizing, dude. It's like you really just like
no, yeah.
I don't
No, I
know.
definitely
I guess I'm not surprised that it has been received in like a bit of a mixed way, but because I guess I could see why it's like inaccessible for so many people,
Yeah.
and why like maybe the third act does not work for everybody, and so on and so forth. But like there was really just no point in the movie where I was not like totally on its wavelength. And I think for a movie that's like doing as much as it is, obviously inspired by like the story. So I
Yeah.
can't give all the credit to the movie, but like any story like that that's doing that much and like making these kinds of decisions to just like never really falter for me, I think is really saying a lot. So that's queer, from my perspective at least. But yeah, I mean we'll talk about it
Yeah.
next week and moving forward for sure. Sadly, probably won't be talking about it as much during our award season episodes, but we can still hold out for the Daniel Craig nomination. I think that's
Which
probably
I think he should, but I don't think
still
he
pretty
will.
likely. Yeah, but you know,
Maybe.
we'll see how it goes. Another movie that I guess you didn't watch, but I know Doug watched. I don't think he'd really want to talk about it all that much. I'm pretty sure he might have even mentioned it last week.
What
Is
movie?
Carry On, which is a Netflix
Oh,
original. Jean Collet Sarah,
yes.
or I don't know exactly how to say his name. I've seen it pronounced like four different ways. So, and I'm pretty sure it's funny. I've seen his name pronounced four different ways, and every time somebody pronounces it differently, he never corrects them. So I'm like, maybe he
Well,
just doesn't care. Actually,
I
um,
was looking, like, I was, like, Googling, like, just, like, on YouTube, like, Monica Barbaro, interviews and stuff, trying to find, like, just, like, someone, like, pronouncing her name, and I found a bunch of them that were saying Barbaro, and then there was, like, a Jimmy Kimmel interview where he said it, like, really weird, but she didn't say anything, and I was like, "What?"
yeah.
Now I'm, like,
Well, I mean, like
confused.
on shows like that, like Kimmel or whatever, I imagine their
They
team like
usually
kind of gives
well, that's
them
what
a
I'm saying, like,
pronunciation
it
ahead of
was weird
time.
because it was, like, a
So
lot of other interviews are, like, they're saying it one way, and then you, like, find, like, one interview from, like, a really popular thing, and they're, like they say it, like, it's a little different, like, a slight, like
yeah,
and it's, like it's interesting because sometimes they'll, like, correct them, and that's, like, a big part of the interview, like, they'll do, like, big jokes about, and
right.
sometimes they just, like they sit there and they just accept defeat,
Yeah.
and then you're screwed.
Yeah, and then you don't know how it's pronounced. But
Yeah.
anyway, his movie Carry On, Taron Egerton, Jason Bateman are in it.
Mhm.
I mentioned it as well, and I kind of like mentioned on whatever podcast I talked about it on that it's not really like a movie that requires that much discussion. So I'm not really gonna
Yeah.
add much to the
It's
discussion,
it's
but it
huge
came
right
out
now. It's,
on
like,
streaming.
one of the most popular movies of
Yeah,
the
it was number
year.
1 on Netflix
The big streaming hit.
for these past couple weeks, and then, people I know, at least in, like, my day-to-day life, like, reached out to me. I
Oh,
remember
yeah, they're like, "Have you seen Carry On,
someone
man?"
texted me, and they were like, "Have you seen Carry On?" And I just replied with my, like, TikTok for the movie. I was like,
That's so funny.
I reviewed it already."
Did you, like,
But
send them the video?
yeah, sometimes because 'cause I'm like,
That's
yeah,
funny as
I'm like,
fuck.
well, because it's like, I don't wanna, like, you know what I
You're
mean? It's like if
Hollywood.
I no, it's
You're just
just
like,
like, well,
"Fucking watch my
if I was
video,
too
bitch."
Hollywood, I wouldn't answer them, but it's
You're
just
like, "Give
like
me views."
no, it's not even about that. It's just that, like, if I'm not, like, on the
I don't
phone
have
with them
time for you.
and I'm just texting them, then it's hard to, like, you know what I mean? It's like if I already said
Yeah,
the
it's like, you
words out
shoulda
loud, like, if
already
I
known I seen Carry On.
oh,
Like, you should
come
stay up
on.
you should, like, have
I'm
notifications
just
on.
saying it's easier to articulate myself like,
Sure.
saying things out loud, which they could get from a video, as opposed to texting them how I
TikToks are
feel
so
about
short,
something.
I don't even be saying things in the video.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I
And
mean,
then
I don't
people are
really
like, "You didn't
either. I
even
just,
say
like
anything about this movie." I was like, "Yeah,
yeah, I
I
just say
didn't. I just
words,
didn't." I'm like, "Yeah,
which is
it
why
was
I look
good."
forward to I mean, so, for the 2024, like, Wrapped video, I wanna, like, post a
No,
longer
yeah.
YouTube video where, like, I'm not really gonna, like I'm not gonna add much more than TikTok, but it'll be nice to just post, like, a 10-minute plus video and, like, not really worry about it being 10 minutes
Yeah,
long, even if
well,
I don't
it's
add a
like
lot.
no one's gonna watch a 10-minute TikTok, like,
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
like it's like a
So
weird, like it's like, yeah, I can review these movies, but, like,
right.
you can only say, like, so much.
But
Um,
I won't be
that's
mentioning
why, like,
Carry
this
On
is
on
such
that
a I mean,
video.
it's a
Um
good platform to hop on here and have,
Yeah,
like, a longer
exactly.
period of time to talk
Um
about things.
No, I mean, I don't really wanna throw too much more at the carry-on conversation. It's mostly just that, like, I think for a certain crowd of people, if this is something that interests you, you will have fun with it. I mean, many of my friends, again, who are like I don't
Yeah.
know that our listener base is too many people who are, like, casual movie watchers,
Shut
but if for
if
some
you're a
reason you
casual, drop,
are
drop something in the chat.
No, but if you
Shout out
are somebody who
shout out
doesn't
my
watch a ton of
casuals.
movies and have somehow found your way to this episode, or the I guess more
No, I mean,
popular thing would be that you
people
just have people in your life who don't watch as many movies. This is like the perfect movie to recommend to me. My friends have been reaching out to me and they're like, "This is the best movie of the year. Like this is like my favorite thing I've watched in months." And I'm like,
uh, this is the
"Awesome,
best
dude.
movie since
That's
Deadpool and Wolverine.
yeah. Okay, listen, let's not. It's better. It's better than Deadpool and Wolverine by a good bit. I listen. I really liked it. I know Doug didn't like it as much, but I think
Yeah,
I tend to really like that kind of the thing that
yeah.
he's going for. I think he knows what he's doing. I think the performances are fun. It's very like it's not as like bold as like the Beekeeper, but
Right.
it's definitely for like the same crowd of people who had fun watching the Beekeeper. Like I think that
Yeah,
would even be
no.
a fun double
I'd probably
feature.
have seen it if it was
Um,
playing in theaters.
yeah, exactly. It's a shame, but it's just how it goes. I mentioned 2024 movies I caught up on already, so I'm gonna skip over a bunch of those. And pretty much the only other thing I want to throw in here before we get to Nosferatu and Baby Girl is Juror number two, which we never did dedicate an episode to because of its kind of limited rollout. But
Yeah.
now, as of December 20th, it's streaming, and so everybody listening could have watched it.
Now
And we don't have to
that
go
is a
into
movie that I think you could really show anybody, and I think, like, because I kinda showed that to my family, and it was
yeah,
like, "Oh, wow," like, it was like it's one of those movies that, like, any I feel like a lot of people could get a good
it
appreciation.
gets the people going.
Yeah, no, like, it's like, people who kinda watch a couple movies here and there, they're kind of taken aback by the Eastwood here.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be one of those movies that, if cable was around still, that'd kill. It would
Yeah,
kill.
there's some people who I showed it to, when I rewatch, there's people who I showed it to that really like it. There's,
You got some
my
haters?
my sister was like, "I
She said,
didn't
"Fuck
love that,"
it."
and I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
it happens," but,
She was like,
um
"Why is he upset that, like, he's going to jail?"
no, but it's like this is a movie that we really have not talked about at
Yeah,
all, and
and it's
it's
tough
like
because, I mean,
really
it
it
kind of
deserves its own episode, and we're
yeah,
only gonna talk about it for like 5 minutes here,
mhm.
but
Well,
you know.
I don't know, I'll talk about it next week.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we're definitely
Like,
gonna mention it among our favorites, but
yeah, no,
it's
it's
just you should watch it. I mean,
yeah.
Eastwood's 94,
Mhm.
and he's killing it.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive. I mean, for, like, just, like, kind of the behind the scenes talk of, like, having to stop production because of, like, his health, and, like, that's kind of the main reason it's kind of talked about as, like, his last movie. It's just, like, he was, like, struggling to, like, finish this one just, like, for health purposes because he's 94 years old. And then you watch the film and it's, like, so, like, coherent and, like, put together and, like,
Yeah.
um, it's very I don't know, it's one of those that's talked about, like, as, like, a movie that, like, you would see, you know win an Oscar like 10 or 20 years ago. Like one
Yeah.
of those like it's like it's very throwbacky, but it's also I mean, it's
It's just like a
modern
movie
in
you
many
don't get
ways
much of
too.
anymore, or really at all anymore, and it's like the exact kind of thing that
Yeah,
like kept Hollywood afloat for like so
yeah,
long now. And I was, I had a conversation yesterday about kind of like the interesting kind of like politics and morals of like filmmakers and how they like weave it into projects. I was talking about a movie that somebody didn't like, and they kind of
yeah.
mentioned that like it was like a racist movie, and I was like, listen,
Oh,
no,
Jordan number 2?
no, not juror number two. This is
No.
a different conversation, but as a part of this conversation, I kind of mentioned like movies that you know are made by filmmakers who might have like a different worldview than you,
Yeah,
but that worldview kind of makes the text so much more interesting. And like in juror
yeah,
number two's case, it's obviously like listen, Clint Eastwood and I probably don't have the same politics, but like but he makes this entire movie about how little faith he has in our justice system,
yeah,
and like really points to all of these flaws that like any of us anybody listening to this episode has probably recognized. I mean, there's just like very obvious
yeah.
things in here. It's like people not wanting to do jury duty, the actual people, the
Yeah,
actual like legal teams, like just being politicians and all of this stuff,
yeah,
like all of these things that, and also just like really like quite literally the blurred lines between like in many cases, I guess, like somebody who is being accused of something but is innocent having to deal with that, and like there's never a good side of it, because in this case it's like a seemingly good person did
Yeah.
the crime and a seemingly bad person did not do the crime, and so now all of a sudden it's like, who do you support in this case, because regardless somebody gets hurt, and that is
Mhm.
like messy, and really makes you like think.
Yeah.
It's like it's easy to kind of say that, like movie wise, because this is such an extreme example, like in this movie where it's like, oh, like, at the end of the day it's whatever, but it's like a lot of this stuff does apply in the real world
Yeah.
in ways that are not exactly the specific example, and when you think about those examples, it really like makes the movie pretty effective.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy that about it.
I love the concept. I mean, you touched on a little bit of this idea of like sometimes you have people that are really they're in their heart, they're trying to do good thing, but sometimes people just want to go home, right? Sometimes people just want to go
Yeah,
home, and like it's like they're not trying to do anything evil or like malicious, like intentionally, but sometimes people are tired and they want to go home,
yeah.
and they end up making the choice to go home, and whether it's like then that that choice might ruin
Yeah,
someone's life or something.
exactly,
I
and it's like, do you ever, like, feel bad for
mm,
not doing enough?
yeah,
Like,
it's like
and it's
yeah,
like,
it's
that's
one of those things
probably
where it's like
something we could
you
all relate to for some reason,
yeah.
is, like, not doing enough about something that we know we should do more about.
Mm. Yeah, and I think about the politics, and I think there's this kind of conversation like can like conservatives like make like good movies and
Yeah,
something,
which is a
and
ridiculous conversation, but
but I think there is an element of I think see it in Eastwood where he's asking questions, and maybe he doesn't believe the same thing we believe, but like he's still asking questions, and I think the sometimes you see with a more conservative media is or like films or whatever is like it's about like they're trying to tell a message, and they're trying to like they have their like belief, and they're trying to make you believe that rather than like a deconstruction of like an idea, or like they're like
yeah.
or they're questioning things. It's more like it's leaning more to like propaganda versus art,
Yeah,
and
Clint
like
Eastwood doesn't really, like, give you a solution.
no, he's
It's
not
just
telling you what's
Yeah, he's
he's
not
just he's
telling you,
like
like, how we're gonna fix the justice system. He's like, "This is just a problem that we
this is what it
have,"
is,
and, like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I mean, the recurring idea in the movie is them kinda saying this thing of, like, which I tweeted about actually after watching it again. I was like, they keep repeating this thing where people are like, "It's not a perfect system, but it's what we got," and it's
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah,
and Clint Eastwood is kinda just, like, taking that and being like, "This is how people treat the system," and, like, it's not a perfect system,
yeah,
like, at all. Like,
yeah.
so that's kind of like the
No, yeah, I
real.
think there's that level of like questioning and open-endedness that is like I think anyone despite your belief can kind of get something away from the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. I mean, and like, not to mention all the other stuff. I mean, great performances. The lead actor, of course, is going to be in the first movie, the actual movie
Yeah,
that we
yeah.
talk about here.
No, well, it's like
Like,
we I was thinking about I keep talking about or we talked about Timothy as like a lead, and I think for my I don't really know who else I would talk about, but like maybe Daniel Craig, but I think like if I was like putting a ballot in for like some of my favorite performances, I think Nicholas Hoult is like right up there. I really love that scene with him in like the garage, and his like
yeah.
eyes are like popping out of
Yeah,
his
dude, his
skull, and
eyes are
like
so
the
like so
bluest
distinct.
eyes
Yeah.
ever. Yeah, no, I mean
Yeah.
I think it's like a it's one of those movies that because he's in Nosferatu and he's gonna be in Superman, and like the general public might not remember this movie as like the Nicholas Hoult movie, but in terms of like just looking at it on this perspective, I think like this is like a career defining role for him. Like it just kind of
Yeah.
knocks out of the park. And I
Yeah.
honestly, for a lot of people, including myself, like really changed my perspective on like him as like a an artist, because I think it's such a special performance that like it goes to show you that like there are a lot of ton of great actors, but it's tough to be a great actor. Not everyone can deliver a great performance in a bad movie or like with a bad director, and
Right.
a lot of people just need that like kind of relationship from the like from a whole crew. Really, it's like it's such a collaborative experience to put you in a place where you can deliver a performance like that. And not every set's going to be that environment that's going to allow you to really flourish.
Yeah. No, I mean, it even makes me, I don't know. Like part of it is also just me thinking about what you said there, like about how like this probably wouldn't be the Nicholas Hoult performance that people remember, and like obviously the rollout of this movie really limited the amount of people that saw it, and so I
Yeah.
wonder like what it's kind
Well,
of
I think if
remembered
this
as,
was like
because it
if
is
it
like such a like timeless movie that feels like it's of a different era but came out in
yeah.
this era. I wonder if that's going to give it some kind of like lasting
I
power.
think it has like I think it might have that like timeless effect where it's like but it's tough
Because I
because
could
it's
watch this movie every year.
yeah.
I could show this movie
Um
to people all the time, and they
yeah.
would eat it up. Like,
Mhm.
so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting to see how it ages, as like especially I mean, especially if it is the last Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. If it really is the last one, I think this is a really interesting movie to talk
Yeah.
about when we find
It's
out if
tough too
that's
because
the case.
really if it got a really wide release, you could totally see this getting some nominations,
Yeah,
and, like, I think if that was the case, if he was Oscar nominated, or even if the movie was had
just
some
Oscar nominated.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think it definitely would've been talked about differently,
yeah,
you know? But I'll be
yeah,
interested
for
to see
sure.
how it kind of ages.
Okay, let's talk about the kind of two big new releases that came out on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
We've got Nosferatu, we've got Baby Girl. We're gonna start with Nosferatu. I think obviously the bigger movie, the one that
yeah.
people would probably rather listen to us talk about. I don't know. I don't know how much the two of us are gonna bring to the Baby Girl conversation, but we'll get there
Did
when we
Doug
get
I don't think Doug ever
there.
saw Baby
Yeah, I'm not
Girl.
sure that Doug has watched it yet. I wonder where he'll
He
fall. I
which
mean,
is
maybe
funny
by the
too,
time
'cause
this episode gets put out, he will have watched it. But
yeah, he was
um,
so excited for it, and he was like, I need to see Baby Girl now, I need to see Baby Girl now,"
yeah,
and now he's seen the 2 other movies, but not Baby Girl.
exactly. So Nosferatu, fourth Robert Eggers movie that we've gotten. People have been using the word passion project a lot. I mean, I guess he's been using the word passion project a lot, and people have been referring to that. Um, I don't know exactly where to start with this movie. The neat thing here is that we really don't have to talk about it on a story level, because not only have we done a Bram Stoker's Dracula episode, but I feel
Yeah,
like we've kind of talked about, because of that episode and maybe just the surrounding movies so much, that we're kind of in familiar territory here in terms of the story. And so we
yeah,
don't really have to do a kind of like plot by plot type of thing like we normally would. We could kind of get through this movie a little quicker, just talking about things that
yeah,
matter to us. And so I don't know. Like I'll just say my kind of general feeling when I left the theater was very much like Robert Eggers knows what he's doing. He's a good director. I've always thought he was a good director.
yeah,
It just, like, immediately when I left, I was like, wow, I feel so much less than I thought I would. It like none of it really feels like it needed to exist. None of it really goes to a place that like sets itself apart from other adaptations as much as it does pull from those adaptations in a way that, like, to me at least, is not all that interesting. I don't know how much Robert Eggers there actually like is in there. I like it's like,
mhm,
well, it's weird because like it's
yeah,
like it's kind of like very Robert Eggers, but in a way that like I just so expected. Like I was like, it just feels like the movie that, like, you know what I mean? It's like I like it's like it just feels like the movie that we would have gotten regardless. And I never want that. Like it's like I want to go in there and see the movie and be like, oh, he took this somewhere interesting that I did
yeah,
not expect him to. And I really don't think he did that. I mean, all of it, like everything kind of plays out in a way where it's like this is just what a Robert Eggers Nosferatu movie should be. And that's like so plain to me, where it's like all
mhm,
of it is still good,
yeah,
but none of it really feels great to me, because
mhm,
I just wanted more. And maybe I'm holding him to a higher standard because I think he's more talented than any, whoever
yeah,
else would be touching this material.
mhm,
Um but it is just kind of like good movie that I really liked, and am at the same time like mostly disappointed by almost entirely.
yeah.
Um
I'm gonna say something that might people might think this is insane, but I'm not saying this comparison is like a one for one, but the more I think about it, some of like the issues I have with Eggers at this point remind me, and like they're not really similar filmmakers in any way, but I think about um Eggers as this person who is, you know, the research part isn't similar, but this there's so much attention to detail in these sets and these costumes and like the kind of aesthetic nature of like the production side of it. Before we even start with the camera, like all the kind of aesthetic nature of the that stuff, the stuff that's going to be in the frame and not the actual frame itself. And it reminds me of Tim Burton in a way of like he is a guy who is really interested and like loves that kind of those sets and those aesthetics of the thing. But I kind of there's missing an element for me in terms of like the actual filmmaking stuff when we pick up the camera. Where
Yeah,
it's like it feels like those two guys feel like guys. They're like these should be my favorite filmmakers. Like I love this kind of like gothic like aesthetic that these two people are operating in different aesthetics for sure in different movies. But I think they both are similar people. Where it's like when you present this aesthetic to me is like an idea, I'm like, oh, this should be like my favorite movie, right? But I'm missing something formally, and there's the like that there's that like kind of phrase that gets brought up a lot of times like style over substance, and you talk about like the style being the
right.
substance and all that. And I think what I'm missing from it is it's not really style, the style like as a formal thing. Like it's not really the style in the camera. It's the style like on the
Like the
set and
yeah, the look of
it's
it.
that's like the substance a lot of times where it's like the I love it. And it's like it's beautiful and like the sets are beautiful and the
Yeah,
the outfits are beautiful. And we talked about like we brought the movie up. We're like it's we're not going to go beat by beat because it's retelling a lot of things and it's kind of doing the Nosferatu thing. It's doing that and um it's just we talk about being a passion project, right? And it's like Eggers has wanted to make this movie since he was like 9 years old, or he saw the movie when he was nine, and he became a teenager, and he's like, "All right, that's what a movie I want to make." And it's it was built up to be this like this is if Eggers gets to wait if Eggers gets to make one movie,
there you go.
Nosferatu is the movie that he wants to make. And when you watch it, it's like he might be too in love with Nosferatu to have made a good Dracula movie or like a vampire movie. Or
Right.
it's almost like he loves the thing so much he's kind of trying to replicate the feeling of watching Nosferatu, but it's almost like okay, but like I know it's almost boring and it's like attempt of like trying to just modernize something, but it almost
Mm.
misses. There's almost a for me it's a missing of what makes Nosferatu because he talks about it being like he's 9 years old and he's watching it in New Hampshire with no sound and it's like this really scary experience. But the original movie is it's very I mean, there's a fun element to that movie where it's like obviously, when they saw it in the 20s, they probably were like, terrified. But I think there's definitely a kind of more modern lens of it being like a fun movie. You talk about like SpongeBob and stuff like that. It's a fun. There's like an element of like he's carrying the fucking uh what is it called where do vampires sleep? The coffin?
Often.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. And I think there's an element of like his like he's not the kind of nature of like what is Nosferatu. It's like bootleg Dracula. It's like it's Dracula. They're trying to make a Dracula movie without the rights, right? And there's an element of like it's a funny kind of thing. And I think the movie at times is like so self-serious where it kind of I don't know. There's also we can talk about the performances, but like there's some people that feel like they're in different movies than other people,
Yeah.
and
The
it's like
performances is a big thing I wanna talk about.
it because like I a lot of people are like really like Aaron Taylor Johnson is like horrible in the movie, and I
Right.
think Aaron Taylor Johnson is just in another movie. He's just like in another movie, where it's like he's bad when you like are like looking at him with everyone else because some people are just like in these like this like very self serious Robert Eggers movie, and then he's like in like he's kind of like having this like kind of more camp performance. That's like it's like doesn't really work in the movie, but because it's like very like tonally clashing with everyone else.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Those are kind of scattered thoughts of the movie, but ultimately I was like, I didn't really like you said, I didn't really feel anything. I mean, it's just like okay, like that
Yeah.
was cool, and like there's stuff I can like point out like I liked,
Yeah.
but if there's something missing of like you say like the kind of the passion
Yeah,
in the pudding,
it's just, like, kind of really paper thin. I mean, it is really, like, the second you go below the surface, you realize
yeah,
that there's nothing there, and
Mm.
it's like a pretty picture.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
the thing, it's
that's
like there's like really I think what is it?
Robert
Oh, frick,
Daniels.
Robert Daniels talking about, like, the beautiful
Yes.
gowns and,
Yeah,
like,
it is like a
it's
very, like, big, beautiful gowns movie
yeah,
where it's
yeah,
like but there
like,
is
yeah,
but you
pretty
know, I mean, it's like it's really hard to watch it and not feel like there's something missing. There is, like, this kind of,
yeah,
like, lack of, like, tension, like, none of it really feels like it's, like, propelling the story, and it's like it is a
mhm.
familiar story, but it's also not in many ways. I mean, it's like most people going to see this movie have not seen another one of the adaptations, I'd imagine. Like, it's not exactly
Talking
familiar
movies that
for
came out, I mean, this movie came out, you know, Nosferatu specifically like 100 years ago, like the
Yeah.
previous Dracula adaptations that we kind of go to with like the Herzog and the Coppola, like that
Yeah,
was
it's
like
like that's still a
20,
while ago. Like
yeah,
most
it's
of
like
these people
30,
have not
40 years
watched these
ago.
movies unless like you
Like,
really I've talked to many people who are excited to watch Nosferatu or have already seen Nosferatu
yeah,
who have not
no,
watched them or and
yeah.
I mentioned it to them after watching it. I was like, if you want to watch one of them to prepare, like these are the ones and
Yeah.
um
Well, it's like a conversation on Twitter of, like, people
yeah,
saying, like, "This movie's so horny," and then people, like, who are, like, big fans of the Coppola film or something like that are like,
like it's
"This is,
like
like, not this isn't even." Yeah, it's
there's
like
this well, I think and this is probably a harder conversation to get into because I think we kind of maybe even touched on this a little bit on the pod when we talked about challengers, but this
yeah,
like idea of what makes a movie horny and like what actually like drives the sexual energy of a
yeah,
movie and not so much it's like it is not so in the same way that like horror is not like scary based on how gory it is like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, a movie is not sexy based simply on how much nudity there is. There's so much more
There's
there,
not even that
and
much
so
nudity in the
no, I
movie.
mean there's not, but you know what I'm saying. It's like I don't think
Yeah.
that the movie like goes to these places that are like totally different from you know. It's like she when she's possessed she moans, and I'm like I get
Yeah,
it.
it's
You know, I'm like, I get the
yeah,
energy's
no,
there. I think it's a good idea. I think you're certainly like creating something there that
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
will
I mean,
enjoy.
it's not like a this film, it's just like,
No,
you know
yeah, no, it's not. I mean, there's listen, it's yeah, there's it's obviously a very sexual movie. I mean, you can't tell the story in a way that's not, but like,
yeah.
um,
But it's also
but
I think it's not as romantic as, like, a film like Coppola's film. I think
sure,
that film
yeah.
is, like that film is so, like, kind of this, like this romance that feels like it's spanning, like,
Yeah, and like,
ages where
it's almost like where the images don't really like connect with the story, I think for me, where there's like this
it
like kind of gorgeous image at the end of like her in the bed, like after it's
yeah.
over and like his body is there, like kind of just like rotting on top of her. And I'm
Yeah, well,
like,
it's people are talking about
and
it, they're
like,
like, it's a really impressive image, and I think it's
yeah, and I
when
just
you
like
take it
don't
out of context, I think it is
feel
it's a but it's like,
yeah,
yeah, there's
exactly, but you
something
don't feel the, like
mm,
none of what got us to that point makes me feel like this image was, like, earned, which is, like that's, like, that image is probably the best thing like, one of the best examples I could give about, like, what my conflict with the movie is because it is, like, this thing where it's, like you're saying, like, when
yeah.
you strip it of its context, it's, like, there's no doubt that this guy's talented because, like, I mean, look at
Yeah,
it, but
and I
then it's,
think
like
that's it
but you
it's a
just
tough
don't
thing.
feel it, like,
Yeah.
that's it's a
It's a tough
weird,
thing, I
like,
think, with
struggle.
modern film criticism and when you get these, like a lot of the conversation is driven by people who aren't engaging with a lot of movies, is I think people see something like this and it's like, "Oh, it's, like, obviously kind of good because of, like there's, like, an inherent quality to some of the stuff of the movie," but we're not talking about it in, like, the context of, like, an image exists next to 2 other images, it's like
Yeah.
it is existing, and I think that was a big issue with me of, like we talk about, like, what he's doing with the camera is these really long oneers,
Mhm.
where he would instead of the only time you would feel like there was, like, cutting back and forth was when you would have a person in, like, the middle of the screen and then there would be another person and they would cut back and forth between them. But I would find
Yeah.
it where you would have these like long oneers. And I would be interested to see how many cuts are in this movie compared. I haven't seen his other movies in a long time, but it felt like you have these long takes, but there's so much of the tension that is brought through cut, right? Like there'll be like scenes where it's like revealing information, right? So you'll have I think it was Aaron Taylor Johnson, and he's on the bed, and then his like dying wife or whatever is there, and it's like pulling, it's like this long oneer that pulls back and reveals uh Lady Rose Depp, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, it would I feel like there would be such a and what do I know, right? But I feel like there would be such a like a harsh like, if they cut, it's like a it's something maybe like more, Eisensteinian, where it would be, the cut and rather than the actual pullback, but just like a cut, right? And
Right.
I don't know, I felt like there's something that there was because I the movie wasn't at least I found the movie not to be scary, right?
No,
Or
no,
like,
neither did I.
and
I
I
was
felt
actually
like
impressed, or not impressed, but more like surprised by how little I was scared
yeah,
because I
well,
thought at
it
the very
feels like
least he would kind of
it
like
it is
utilize.
missing so much of that, like, oomph, like, that kind of, like, because so much of horror is, like, cutting and sound, and I
Yeah,
felt like the camera was so, like, kind of just chilling or, like, it would, like I don't know, I felt like it almost, like, was like, "Oh, it's scary enough because 'cause you're seeing, like, the actual imagery," but it was missing the camera being involved in, like, uh, driving those scares, I guess, and I
yeah,
think, like, it's the scares, but it's also the romance and the sex and all of it is kind of it's like it starts with that camera and I think you could make this movie that's super beautiful and kind of gothic and it has good performances it has bad performances whatever but it's kind of missing like the kind of formal guidance that really needs it to kind of get any feeling out of it.
yeah. No, I mean that's most of what I wrote down here is on that subject, like whether it is the actual horror or all of the sex that's involved
Yeah.
or anything in between. It does feel like none of it kind of reaches the level that I think it needs
Mhm.
to make it its own thing. Which is so strange given who's making the movie, but
Yeah.
that is really what I came out of it thinking. I wanted to talk about the performances because you mentioned them, and I think it's an interesting conversation that's kind of happening. Is that like it feels like every time I open my phone, somebody is saying either a different performance is the worst performance in the movie or the best
The best.
performance in the movie,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it doesn't seem like more often than not, a movie will kind of have a pretty consensus view on its performances. Like people will be saying, "This is the standout performance of the
Yeah.
movie," or like, "This is the guy who deserves an award," or whatever. And it's like this one feels
I
very much
and
the
I
opposite.
think it
Where I
is
have seen
because of
equal
that
measures, like Aaron
it's
Taylor
because of
Johnson is
that
awesome
inconsistent
and the
tone.
worst. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's like if you go in the movie and like, this is how you're approaching the movie, and you're approaching it in like a silly way, right? You're like, "This is a silly it's gonna be a silly movie," right? I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Willem Dafoe, right? But I think if
Right.
you are like, "Oh, it's like you're approaching it in like a different way," you might think it's so like inconsistent in tone. It's kind of like whatever tone you're buying into, I think like or you want it to be, right? If you
Yeah.
want it to kind of feel more, I think there's a performance in the film that you might gravitate towards more because it kind
Yeah.
of is more aligned with the tone that you're at least interpreting or expecting.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still like kind of, I think, universally praised performances. I mean, I've not really seen much hate in Lily Rose
Yeah.
Depp's direction. I think almost
I
everybody kind of agrees that she's great.
who I
Um,
came away with? And he's been in a couple movies this year, but Ralph Ennison,
yeah, dude,
is
he's
kind of like
awesome.
I know he's been in, like I don't know if he's been in all of Robert Eggers' films, but, like, he's so perfect for the,
Yeah,
like,
he's in The Witch, he's in The
all-time kind of
Northman.
not in The Lighthouse because there's nobody else in that movie. Um,
Yeah.
but he has, like, kind of that perfect voice for, um, like, I don't know, the kind of gothic vibe. I think
Oh yeah, he's like he
he's
has such
so
a
good.
strong voice. Speaking of voices, I mean Skarsgård as well is just
Mhm.
like awesome. I really like I don't know if it's like healthy for him to be doing that,
The
but
voice?
yeah, but it sounds fucking good.
Yeah.
I really
I
like
don't know.
that aspect of it. Like
Well, there was definitely, like we talked about, the Eggers, like, this is the movie, like, he wanted to make, when he's doing, like, the I don't know uh, what is it called, language it is, but he's
oh
doing, like,
yeah, I
the
saw
Nos
some people saying it's Latin. I saw some people saying it's German. I'm not
yeah.
familiar, so
Maybe it's
I don't
German
really
because
know. German would
Nosferatu
make
is
sense, I guess.
yeah. But because like, you talk about, like, Eggers wanting to do the Northmen in, like, Old Norse and, like, him
Yeah,
wanting to do these, like, languages, I think
and he gets to
the
kind of
kind of
like
yeah,
test it
the fact
out
that
in this
then the fact that
movie.
Nosferatu or Count Orlok isn't talking entirely in English, I think is definitely, um, more like an Eggers, like, definitely was, like, happy about that,
Yeah.
um, but I don't know. I think, I guess for me, I was really maybe it's not even the performance and it's more the kind of the formal things I was talking about, but I found, like um, Count Orlok himself to be kind of disappointing, and there's a lot of talk about,
I
like, the
kind of agree.
design of him, but it's like, I don't know, he's just kind of like he's just there, you know? He's just
Yeah, I just don't really I mean, I really liked him by the time we got to, like, that ending scene that we were talking
mhm,
about, but I really, like, don't know that everything in between the early parts when we first arrived at his castle
yeah,
and the end of the movie, like, that's kind of where I got pretty lost in the movie. Nicholas Holt arriving at the castle and like that
yeah,
first introduction to Count Orlok, I was like very much like vibing with the voice and like the way that he's like positioned in the frame and like it all kind of
yeah,
like and like that kind of like glowing fire and all of it was just like the atmosphere was kind of perfect for me. And then pretty much as soon as they get back to uh the town, I forget the name of the
yeah,
well, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, there's only one town in the movie. When they get back there, I like it just completely loses me kind of. I mean, that's like really where the movie just did not interest me
yeah,
at all, and I felt like that's the kind of section of the movie where I think Eggers probably should have put his touch on it, and the section of the movie where it just like completely disappears. And like that's
yeah,
the frustrating part, is that by the time I got to the end, it was all kind of like rid of it, where it's like, because even on his way to the castle, there's like that kind of scene where he like stops at the like that little village or whatever, and that like whole little section, whatever it is, like 5-10 minutes. I'm like, this is very Robert Eggers in a way that I think is very cool. I totally like bought into it. And then it just feels like we lose it more and more when the movie like leaves the castle, for me at least. I mean, that's like when I
yeah.
really that whole section is really when I just like did not that like my expectations were just like completely let down at that point.
Yeah, I don't know, it's interesting, as like, I don't know, 'cause it's like it's kind of this big final film of the year almost,
Right.
and I'd be interested in to see because he's talking about, like, 2 more films in the canon, right?
Right.
And, like, I'd be interested to see, um, his kind of because he's a younger guy, right? And, interested to see, like, kind of his I guess, the next 10 years of his period because it almost feels like he kind of knows how he wants to make a movie, and
Yeah.
we talk
Well, I
and
have some stuff. I have some
it's
stuff
kind of this
written down
conversation
here
yeah,
that I
like
that
like,
I
from
wanted.
his interviews?
No. I mean, just like things that I was going to bring up in
Oh,
reference to the movie. I mean, one of like the big things I kind of wanted to talk about was the Robert Eggers of it all. Like,
yeah,
kind of like, we're going to talk about some news that may or may not involve Robert Eggers, but I want you to
okay,
like erase that news from your brain for a
okay.
second and just kind of talk about like where you both think he can go after this, and also like what you would actually want him to do.
Yeah, um, I know Doug has talked about this of, like, this idea of, like, him making smaller movies,
Yes.
and because he's trying to make these, like, really historical accurate, like, you know, period pieces, but he's also working like with like $100 million or whatever.
Mhm.
And there's almost the quality I think of the I think the lighthouse. It's been years since I've seen it, but like the lighthouse is kind of this movie that is built on restriction, right? This it's you're two guys and you have like you're on like one plot of like little land, right? And you kind of have to like with the restriction you have to be creative. And I think maybe the best version of Eggers is the version of The Witch in the Lighthouse where he's really working with scraps and he has to make something formally with little. And I think it almost he gets caught up in because so much of it we talked like I said is the research and that's such a big part of it for him and the accuracy of the historic stuff and the sets and the costumes and stuff. And I think sometimes you kind of get caught away with that and you're not you're less focused on making a movie and you're kind of just doing whatever. So I think smaller, but it's tough because he's such a. I mean, we talked about this movie's doing well, right? So
Yeah.
if this movie does
I
really
think
well,
it's
it's like
more
a really
likely he
popular
goes
movie.
bigger.
It's more likely I don't know how much bigger you can really go, but like stay at the size of like really kind of blockbuster movies
Yeah,
almost.
my thing is more that like, and I get where Doug's coming from with it being smaller. I almost like would be fine with him making movies of this size. I
Yeah.
just think he has to approach them a little bit
Well,
differently.
yeah.
Because
It's like
Nosferatu is like
you can make big movies
material
that are
that
good.
means something to him, I guess. And obviously, the little piece of news we're going to talk about is also involving like kind of pre-existing material. And it's like
Yeah.
I almost just want. I think he can make a movie of like on this scale with material that's unique to him, and it would have all of the things that I feel like this movie is
Yeah.
missing. So I don't even necessarily think that he needs to go smaller as much as that he does need to just like
Yeah.
do a little
No,
take a little bit
I
more from himself and a little bit less from like the art that
yeah.
that it
Well, it's
means
tough
something to
because
him.
well, I mean, it's not tough, but like interesting because we talked not we, but like it's the conversation of the Northman where it's like he's upset with how that went and like it's kind of this like studio interference thing and like he's just really not happy with that. But then with the Northman, not the Northman, with Nosferatu, it feels like I mean, I haven't heard anything about it, but it feels like it was a better experience, right?
Yeah,
But it's like, okay, I don't know. It feels like it's like very similar in terms of like I feel like he didn't really get away with anything like different. I'm sure there was like you would never know. Maybe if he tried to make this movie with the same people or the at the same time, it would have been a little different here and there. But it feels like I want him to get a little crazier. I want it to get a little weirder. Like there's something like it's kind of it almost feels like it's too like pop, or it's like he's trying to deal with these historical accurate things and these. That's why I said go smaller, where you can like you have more ability, but it's able you're able to do it. I mean, there's no one saying, at least in my knowledge, that you can't do whatever, right? Um,
yeah,
but it's like I don't know. It's a weird spot, but it's also this is his fourth movie, and like if this was the 1920s, right, he would be making 50 of them, and it's like people get better, people get worse, whatever. It's like there's I think he has so much, but that's the thing is we talk about like him being like promising, right, and like him
yeah,
having talent, where it's like I think he's capable of making really great things. I just it's you don't know. Like it's like this movie's kind of it feels disappointing because he's had high. You're so early on in your career, you have these highs, and like you get you get brought up in like Jordan Peele conversations and stuff like that.
yeah,
You get brought up on these conversations with these other filmmakers who are really promising that are like also newer, and then it's
yeah,
like okay, we're expecting, and you kind of have this expectation of these younger guys to get better and better and better and better, and you either it's almost like it's tough to like kind of see it as like it's like a dip in quality or just kind of almost a plateau of like you hope that he can improve, but it's also like I don't know. But
yeah,
I think for his sake, I think with the success of this film, for at least a couple other ones, you will have no time or no issue financing a project, which is ultimately the biggest hurdle of these younger filmmakers. Is like if your films aren't super successful, even if they're good, right?
yeah,
It's the struggle of financing future projects because if you can't finance a project, how are you going to get better, really? So I think the positive side of it is it's like it's a fine movie and he had the ability of this fine movie is doing well is that he's going to have opportunities to
yeah,
do other things, right?
yeah, for sure. Um, I don't want to move on to the other movie without going back a little bit
Yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
performance thing. I don't know if you wanted to. Well, I mean, I guess your answer would be Ralph Innocent as far as like standout performance goes. Then, I just
I
didn't
mean,
know if you had a kind of
he was the
opinion
person where it
on
was
best
like,
performance, worst performance
yeah,
in
yeah,
it
yeah.
among all this discussion. Um,
He was one of those guys where it's like I'm sure I knew he was in the movie, but then you go there, you sit down, and you're like, oh wow, like he every time I see this guy, like he's just really impressive. Like he's just like and he's one of those guys where it's like because of his age and his look and his kind of he's never gonna be like a movie star, but it's like he's one of those guys where like A
yeah,
plus talent, right? So it's like he's
yeah,
one of those guys where you can kind of slide into a bunch of movies because he's not gonna like he's not gonna cost much. And we're looking at that element. He's like, he's a guy can be in really anything, but he's always gonna kind of bring that A+ talent. So that's why I bring him up. But I do think Lily Rose Depp definitely silenced a lot of people in terms of like, you know, obviously Anya Taylor Joy would have been amazing, but I think when she got cast, Lily Rose Depp got cast, a lot of people were like, "Oh, like this is the movie's gonna suck. Like the movie's gonna suck, and it's gonna be her fault, right?" And like she was seen as like this like D-list, not D-list name, but D-list kind of actor, and this kind of like she's in a bunch of shit. You know, that's basically her thing. Is like she has a big name in a lot of garbage, right? She was in The Idol. She's in whatever. And I think she really proved. And I was always fond of the casting, and I think she obviously has that look. You know, she has like huge forehead, and I think like she,
Okay. Why
no, I think
why is that like the
she just like I don't know, she has like the kind of look to that kind of era, I guess. She fits the Victorian kind of
Sure.
vibe.
No,
Um,
yeah.
but and I think she's really good in the movie, and I think I at least my hope is what I've been saying online is I hope that this movie kind of propels her into a level of pedigree, I guess, that she's seen by other filmmakers at a high level that like, oh, she's
Yeah.
like a talented actress. And that she could kind of join the ranks of like getting good work consistently or like decent work consistently or even good work here and there.
Yeah.
I think that would be really because I do think she is talented.
Yeah. I
But yeah,
agree.
the rest of the cast, I'm like kind of whatever on.
Yeah. I'm not like, I think my thing is all similar where it's like I want to see her in more good stuff and I do like her. I don't really have like negative
Yeah,
things to say about her. I don't quite think it reaches the heights of like favorite performances of the year for me
no,
that
no,
everybody
no, no,
else is
no, no.
kind of talking about. Like I don't see that here
Yeah,
exactly. I don't think really the
Mhm.
movie has any of my favorite performances of the year,
No, no, no,
um
no.
but I there's not really, for me at least, there wasn't a performance I really disliked. I know there's been the Aaron Taylor Johnson hate. I know there's like
Yeah, I
way,
was expecting him to be worse because of the way that people were talking about him,
yeah, it's like
and
I
then I was
really
like
don't think anybody's like
I was like,
bad
"Oh, I
to me.
understand why people don't like it because he's kind of tonally different from the rest of the performances." But I think, like, it was at least fun. Like, it was like, "Oh, he's, like, silly," you know? It's like
Yeah,
it wasn't like a bad where it's like, "Oh, I get this guy off the screen. Like, I can't watch this." It was like, "Oh, he's, like, ridiculous," but it's kind of, like, fun.
yeah.
Um, but
No,
yeah,
I
I
mean
don't know.
that's
I
where I
agree
land. I think it's just
I
like
agree with
everybody's
you that, like,
good.
Lily Rose Depp isn't, like I don't think she should win an Oscar for this, but I think there's interesting concept of like the lead horror performance where maybe we almost overrate them because they're not seen as Oscar worthy. Like the Oscars aren't going to talk about horror movies, so we have a like inclination to be like, oh, this performance should like with Mia Goth for like the X movies. Like she's good in
Yeah,
those movies, but there's this level of like horror movies are disrespected so much in
yeah.
for award stuff, so we have to overhype some of these like good
And
performances
the thing is when
to
you, have a situation like Nell Tiger Free in The First
yes.
Omen, when somebody can kind of be a benchmark
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for like you see the horror performance and you're like, this is my favorite horror performance of the year, then it makes it a lot easier to compare the other ones to that when you really get
Yeah,
a
yeah.
great one. Kind of like I feel similarly about like Lupita Nyong'o and Us, like
Mhm.
where it's like she's so good in that movie that like
Oh,
any
yeah.
other horror performance
Yeah.
that year I could stack up against her, and then it's like, is she really deserve? And it's like if she
Yeah, yeah.
really is like miles above everybody else, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe we should have a conversation about like this is an awards movie,
Yeah,
as opposed to like just a good horror performance. Because it's like when you look at the awards movies, you could compare a lot of these
yeah,
like potential Oscar nominees to each other. Um,
yeah.
I
It's interesting too
that's the
because
conversation, I think.
I could foresee maybe not, maybe who knows. But I would when you think about them like removing like what you already know, it would feel like horror movies would be big performance movies, awards movies because they're so performance driven in like a way where
Yeah,
like and obviously it comes with like the history of the genre and like kind of the way they're perceived. But I think that's why people are so like, why doesn't this, why isn't she or he or whatever getting nominated, who whatever whatever performance, but
yeah,
like why aren't they getting nominated? Because they are like so like kind of in your face, like with a lot of screaming and a lot of like acting, really. It's a lot of like they're kind of in there's just so much where it's like another you see some other performances that would maybe awards or they're like more reserved, right? And they're more like they're quieter performances that are really like they're equally impressive, but it's kind of the horror performances are often more in your face because they're facing death at any time. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting kind of conversation, and with the awards kind of body more often recently kind of changing and swaying a little to more of the popular opinion. I don't know. Maybe in the future, I like you see like something like Christopher Nolan talking about doing a horror movie. Like I think if you have someone like that who does this big like kind of generational in terms of like viewership horror movie, I think you could see it only takes a few guys to really change the landscape of how like these awards work.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting because I think it definitely is like it's definitely a conversation like it's similar to like kind of the conversation of like the stunt performers, right? Where it's like they should be um seen and kind of rewarded for their work, and it's kind of seen as like the horror movies aren't really seen as like something that gets rewarded, and
Yeah.
maybe that should change in the future.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if a Nolan horror movie just cleans up like 9
Yeah,
Oscar
right.
nominations in the
What's it
future, and
then
then
it's
it's like,
like,
how does
okay,
that
what
impact us
it's
moving
all
forward? But,
yeah, it's all about like
um
prestige and like if a prestige guy does anything. Like
yeah,
it's interesting too when we talk about like what's the guy who did Poor Things?
Yorgos.
Yeah, like well Yorgos is he's like kind of riding that line, right? Where they're not like horror movies, but they
But
have
they are,
like
like, almost movies that you wouldn't expect
yeah,
to be
right?
in
Where
those
it's like I think
conversations.
you
They're
have
like
yeah, more guys who are kind of out
yeah.
there
I
getting
wonder what would
nominations.
happen, because I think part of Yorgos's thing is that he kind of, like, appeals to this international body of the Oscars that keeps
Yeah.
growing, and so
Well, that's why I
and I
think the
think even though
substance, right?
Nolan is not an American director, he at least is, like, a Hollywood director.
Yeah, but I think
So
that's why I think The Substance is getting award nominations because
yeah,
it's
because
not
it's
an
a French
American film.
director.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
and,
think there's like certain things like that where it's like, maybe a European director gets some award stuff, and then maybe someone
yeah,
like Nolan who's big, like, things that, uh, you kind of have to, in terms of like the award race, play certain areas if you're trying to get like a different movie kind of.
yeah,
You have to check certain boxes if you want to get this like more out there thing kind of
yeah.
seen.
Before we move on to the second movie, I think I probably already know your answer to both of these questions, but kind of where
Yeah.
this movie falls both in comparison to other Nosferatu Dracula adaptations that you've
Yeah.
seen, and then also I guess where it falls against Robert Eggers' other movies. I think I don't know if we're the same on the Dracula adaptation front, but I think this might be my least favorite one of the
Are we
4 that I've
talking
seen.
specifically Nosferatu or just Dracula?
I mean, so I guess I would include, like, I guess for me, I don't really know how I'd rank them, but for me, I would put both the Murnau, the Herzog, and the Coppola one above this, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have to rewatch the those older 2 for them to be like more fresh in my mind, but I can't imagine myself rewatching them and liking them less than this one. I think if
Yeah,
anything,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
like them more.
I haven't seen the
Um,
Herzog film,
yeah, it's been a
um,
while since I've seen that one, and
and it's been a while since I've seen the original, but I would say, yeah, it's probably like the worst at least I've seen, but I think, there's a ton of Dracula movies.
sure, yeah. I mean, I
Eh
guess technically there's a handful. I meant more like
yeah. No, I mean,
direct
that's the thing.
adaptations,
The
but
issue is, like, I love I love Dracula, and I love all these, like, monster movies, and that's why, I'm excited for the not the Northman, the Wolfman, and, like, I'm excited to see these, Blumhouse attempts at, like, kind of making a monsters universe because those are, like, things I really like, that is something that I'm really interested
right,
in. So I was always excited for the idea of a Nosferatu movie, and that's why it's like I have this weird, kind of struggle with Eggers is, like, he makes movies on paper that I think I would really like, but there's a kind of degree of separation, maybe like formally or in terms of
sure,
like his direction that he doesn't allow me. But I would say in terms of like, I think it's important to kind of put it in modern perspectives where it's like, yeah, it's better than the last voyage of the Demeter and like
Sure,
Renfield
sure.
and like there's a
Yeah.
lot of like these like shitty
Yeah, if
other
we're including all of those, then it clearly yeah,
yeah, well, it's like
I guess it's a weird way to phrase the question because I don't really know what would count and what
no,
wouldn't
but I think
count,
it's important that
but
it's like when you're talking about like Nosferatu adaptations, like specifically Nosferatu and these like the pinnacles of like Herzog and or Murnau and whatever. I think it kind of stoops in comparison. But when we're talking about these modern vampire adaptations, it's there's a lot of bad ones, and I think there in no way is this like the worst Dracula or even vampire movie to come out in recent memory.
yeah.
But it just kind of sits in the weird middle place where it's like, yeah, it's fine. It's like, but it's weird because it's like you're expecting more because it is Robert Eggers, and it's like a guy with that name and that guy with that pedigree, and then and it's like we're talking about the kind of it's like a movie he's want to make forever, and it feels like there's so much riding on it, right? After the kind of negative energy around the Northmen, and it's this big movie, and it's doing so well, and then it's just like okay, it's like whatever. I don't, it's it's weird. I'm I mean I don't know what we're talking about in the news, but I am for one excited for his Night movie. I big fan of knights. I remember there was a tweet thing going around a while back where it was like I don't remember what it was. It was like knights, pirates, or
Yeah.
cowboys or whatever. And
That's not included in the news,
yeah,
but yeah, I do.
I love knights. I like
Yeah,
that as like a kind of aesthetic thing, and
yeah,
I'm interested in where we go with that. I am worried it's gonna be a similar experience though, where it's like, yeah, I mean the knights look awesome, man. Like, but
yeah,
man, like I don't know, it's like I'm missing something else.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't know. I'm it's one of those. It's like a guy that I'm always gonna keep in the back of my mind and watch and be interested in what he does. But I am kind of waiting for him to take a step to where he's like one of the best directors working today, which I just don't think he's in that like at that level, I guess, right now.
yeah, right.
But he is, I guess the problem is he's definitely seen as like one of the better working guys today, and for me at least, I want him to take a couple steps.
Yeah. Okay, so if I were to guess your ranking, I know you don't like The Witch, so I'm assuming this is above The Witch,
Well,
and
I guess the
then
problem with that film is or the ranking is like I saw The Witch in 2022. They were about
yeah,
to go on 2025. I don't really remember much from it.
sure.
So it's like if we're talking about like specifically letterbox ratings, my lowest rated Robert Eggers movie is The Witch, but I don't it's like I
But
don't
you
know.
think you
Maybe
might like it more if you were to watch it again?
yeah, I think I would probably a little.
Okay, interesting.
So I don't know.
But
It's
your favorites are is The Lighthouse your favorite then?
I would say so.
Okay,
I
yeah,
would say I like The Northman a decent amount. I think The Lighthouse is good, but it's like I think The Lighthouse is like maybe a 3.5. I have it rated. Also, probably haven't seen it since like 2022 or like
yeah, but
2021.
that one's a little more like
So
you
it's
were
been like
positive on it when you watched it
4 years,
back then,
and
so
I'm
if
when I yeah
anything,
when I watched it, I was like, oh,
yeah,
this is really interesting. And this is weird, and like I haven't really seen anything like this. And then I probably
yeah,
watched like 1,000, 2,000 movies since then. It's like
right,
so I don't know. I really it's like tough to have like a total opinion on the guy when it's been so long. But it's like if I'm purely looking at this movie on its own, it's a
yeah.
little worrying.
I
But
guess I fall into a similar camp where it's like I really would need to revisit all these movies, but as far as know, I think this would be my least favorite, which just because it is kind of lacking something that I don't think any of the other ones do.
mm,
Like I don't know that I dislike it significantly less than like The Witch or The Lighthouse. I mean, The Northman's my favorite, which is I
yeah,
guess not common opinion, but I do really enjoy that one. And it's like I don't know that this movie is like so much worse than The Northman or than The Lighthouse or The Witch, which are
what do you have
probably
the North End rated?
the Northman, I think I have rated like a 4.5. I love the
Okay,
Northman. I mean, that was like
yeah,
whatever year that was. That was I guess that was
2 years ago.
2022. Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies of that year. I mean, I really liked the Northman, and it's like the Lighthouse I probably would like even more if I watched it now.
Yeah,
And the Witch I feel like I'm pretty. I don't know that revisiting it would give me a very like a
yeah.
drastically different opinion, but at least the Witch like kind of has that thing that I think is not here.
I think for
Um,
me, I think The Lighthouse and The Witch I could see myself being more fond of, and I think I don't see myself gravitating more to Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's what I'm kinda talking about, that, like, those 2 movies are,
Yeah,
like,
it's like it's not really a movie I wanna
restricted.
watch again.
It's like the restrained kind of element of it, like, there's
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm
Um,
not, like, rushing to rewatch his films,
yeah.
anytime soon.
Okay, let's talk about Baby Girl, which I don't think is gonna warrant, as long of a conversation, but I don't know. Owen did not like this movie, so
I
maybe you
wanna
have a
be the
lot.
baby girl.
Yeah, I feel like you have a lot. I guess you could have a lot to say, but I feel like you
I
mostly I
I
think
have,
it's
like,
mostly just
nothing to
not
say
for
about this
you.
movie.
Yeah, I don't know that this is really
I made, like, a
the
I
thing
made, like,
I
a
think the
TikTok
thing
video about it,
is
and I was
that,
like,
like,
"Yeah."
a good place to start would just be that, like, I thought this was gonna be a different movie.
What did
Um,
you I'm interested, what did you think this movie is gonna be like?
not that I thought it was gonna be a different movie, but I thought it was going to be a sort of like I don't know, I think a big part of the marketing
Yeah,
was kind of one a big part of the marketing was just that it's like
it's
a
hot.
movie about sex, it's hot, like, duh.
The
But,
cult
like
thing, man.
but, like, another thing was, like, they were kinda, like, hinting around this idea that, like, it goes to a place
Oh, like, it
that
gets crazy?
yeah, like, that it's, like, different, and so I
Yeah.
thought it was gonna be like this movie where, like, when we get to the podcast, it's like a perfect podcast movie where, like, it has interesting ideas that we talk about
Oh,
for
I
a
see.
long time, and
Yeah.
it's like, this is what I compared it to this in my review, and I think this is, like, so clearly the comparison, and maybe even the reason why you didn't like it, um, is that, like, I watched it and I was like, "This is like" listen, I've only not even finished the first season of this show, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is like an episode of Industry. Like it's like, and it's not even. And I'm gonna be honest, if I stacked it up against the episodes of Industry that I've
It's
seen,
not
it's
as
not
good
even
as
the best episode of Industry. Like, and so I've watched like 7 or 8 episodes of that show, and I don't even think it would be my favorite episode. And so it's like, if that's the benchmark, I could see why you really don't like the movie. I mean,
Yeah.
I like Industry. I enjoy it. Like that's like palatable to me. I'm like, this is a like I vibe with the material. I get it. It's fun, but like it really does not go anywhere that I thought a movie like
It
this
really
would
doesn't go
go
anywhere.
based on like yeah, it really doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I don't know.
Uh,
I thought it would be different and not even just on like the front
I'm
of
gonna lose this game.
like what?
My running backs suck, bro.
Yeah, it's gonna be a
It's gonna
tough
be a
one.
time.
I mean, the problem is that your running back is playing against my running back, and they are both not getting the
It's
ball.
like,
So,
fuck. You know, it's gonna be
anyway, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but but
I need
the other
George
thing is
Kittle to go
like
crazy.
the other thing is like I don't not only do I think the movie doesn't really go to suggest any interesting things, but I also don't think it really even explores like what the base level thing is, which is like if this is just a movie that is like a movie for horny people, like you're just like making a movie
Yeah,
about, you know what I mean? Like it's like if you're making a movie about sex and like and specifically like a movie that like really suggests stuff about a
yeah,
lifestyle involved like some sort of kinky lifestyle, but like
yeah.
doesn't really ever go there. I'm like,
Mhm.
why did it not go there? Because that's my because that's my problem. No, really, it is. It's like
Yeah,
a it's like, and this sounds terrible because it's like like
yeah,
when
yeah,
people
yeah.
do the kind of like babies first whatever. It's like baby's first sex movie. It's like there's not much. There's it's like which is like I
Yeah.
mean baby shouldn't be watching sex movies. That's not my point. Like, but it is
Fucking
like this kind
baby.
of thing where it's like
It's like the baby and baby girl.
the recurring idea is that she sort of like has to drink some milk, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, dude. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like, this is it's so tame
Whoa, whoa,
that
whoa,
like
whoa.
I'm just like, I wish, but it never really like commits to going. And it's like I've seen some horny movies before, and it's
This
like,
guy, he's like the
eh,
fucking expert
it's.
on them.
I'm just saying, it's like I've seen
Yeah,
I've
you've
seen
been
what a
around the
movie
block.
I've seen what a movie like that
You've
can
seen what a movie
be,
can do.
and
Yeah.
and this movie does not try to do that, and it's frustrating because there's like one scene where it kind of like captures the energy of what I think a movie like this should be, which is when they're like in this like hotel room together, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like an
She's like the
extended
dog.
scene between the two of it's like you know what I mean? It goes on for like a while a little bit. And
Yeah,
as
they
this was
need
happening, a lady sitting a couple rows in front of us stood up and left the theater. And I was like, good. You know what I mean? I was like, that's what I want.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but the problem is it almost feels like they tried to make a movie that like makes one person leave the theater, but like safe enough for everybody else to stay. And
Yeah.
I'm like, just like,
Yeah,
does that make
it's like
sense? I'm like,
pop
just like,
provocative.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, yeah, it's enough to like make
It's like, "Oh,
one.
we're seeing the crazy
Yeah,
movie," but
it's
it's
like
like
enough to
not
make like
actually.
one kind of person who like is a
It's
little bit
like
sensitive about the
Saltburn.
material like leave, but like nobody else
It's
is gonna be like that scared off by it because it never really
yeah.
goes anywhere. And so I'm like, when are they gonna make a movie like this that goes
Maybe
there?
when are they
Is
gonna make
my
a movie for the freaks?
That's what I'm saying because it's like people are like, oh, Nosferatu's for the freaks, and people are like, Baby Girl's for the freaks, and I'm like,
It's like,
are
man,
the
you don't
freaks in the
real
room with us? Are they, like, show me the
uh,
freaks? Like it's like because
the complete unknown
they're
is the
not
freak.
watching these movies.
Complete
Like
unknown.
that's my problem, and I don't want to like make it a whole thing because it's
Yeah.
again, I don't think it's a movie that we even really need to talk about that much. It's really
I kept
like
well, it's
not
I
a
think
lot
it's just like
there.
a bad like Safties riff almost.
Yeah,
Where it's like trying to do like this like tension like build up thing like where what we're doing is bad and we're gonna get fucking caught and like we're gonna like but it's like never like it's like okay like what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? It's like she loses her job like it's like she
she's like
gets
a
a
billionaire
she gets
probably.
divorced like
Yeah, she's
it's
like the CEO of a tech company. Like it's like
where it's with Uncut Gems, it's like, oh, this guy's gonna fucking die. Like he's gonna fucking die if this doesn't go wrong. Like his whole life's gonna be fucking
yeah,
over. Where it's like with her, it's like I don't know. It's like it's hot and it's trying to build up this like tension and it's like oh this is like we shouldn't be doing this, but it's really like I mean it's
that's
like
like
okay
and that core concept on its own is like all you need for a movie like this to be successful, where it's like doing something wrong and like
yeah
the appeal of something like that sexually is like
mhm,
what can fuel a movie like this. The problem
yeah.
is that like again, like I'm saying, it just doesn't go there. I'm like it's like
Well,
wrong, but like
there's
to
like
what degree? Like
yeah there's a line in
it's
the
never
movie
wrong enough.
but there's a line in the movie where she's like, "I can't, like, I don't fucking come if there's no stakes." Like that's not what she says, like word for word, but there's like that's like
Sure.
basically her
Yeah.
message to Antonio
Yeah.
Banderas, which is like she like it's like it doesn't matter. There's no stakes. I don't fucking care, right? And that's the maybe the movie's fault is like there's not the stakes aren't big enough. You know, it's like there really aren't
Yeah.
stakes in the movie. This movie's all about like she needs stakes, and the stakes are like okay. I don't know. It's like it's
Right.
such a nothing movie to me. Where I was like, I'm in the movie. I'm like I'm trying to like engage with it and whatever. And when the movie ends, like, oh, okay. It's like it's so just like nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's like I it's like it's not like it's not nothing that I'm like, oh, this is like the worst movie ever. But it's like there's not really any positives that I really have about the film. It's like it's just
Yeah.
like whatever. Um,
So let me talk to you about the performances then, because it is kind of a
yeah,
performance movie above
sure.
all else. Kidman getting like some awards attention, Harris
Yeah.
Dickinson kind of a rising star in the same vein as
Mhm.
like some of the other people we've talked about, whether it's like
Yeah.
Nicholas Hoult or Timothy Chalamet or whoever. Um, and then Antonio Banderas as a supporting performance. We could also mention Sophie Wilde, who we haven't like seen a lot of, but obviously was like kind of a
Yeah.
breakout in Talk to Me, and
Yeah,
kind
she's
of
just
has
like
been she's just
yeah.
there in this
And she's
movie. But it is
Australian.
yeah, I mean, she's not really like doing a whole lot in this movie, but it is like notable, I guess, that like all we I mean, she was kind of like billed as what will be a sort of huge rising star after Talk to Me, but that was so recently that we
Yeah.
haven't had that many projects since then, and so this is like the first
She
time,
talked
at
to
least
me. She's
on the
not going to be in Talk to
podcast.
Me too, right?
I think she is.
Oh,
I
I forget
anyway,
what happened in that movie.
yeah, same.
It's like
But
she
like,
alive?
yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they could do something with it, but that's not my point. Is that like kind of billed as like this super young rising star, and there hasn't
Yeah,
been enough time yet, and so this is like the first time on the pod at least that we can mention her again since that movie.
yeah.
But
She's like an up and
I
coming
really
star.
like Nicole Kidman. I don't know exactly that this is like give her an Oscar kind of
It's like
thing.
a fire movie. It
I
feels like a
I
streaming movie.
I've been like a known Harris Dickinson defender, one of
Yeah,
like my favorite kind of young actors, and like I think he's awesome here. I think he's mostly awesome here because he's doing what he does every day, which is like be hot. Like it's like, like it's like he's not.
He just showed up.
Yeah, and then it's like I do actually really think Antonio Banderas is like lovely in the movie. I'm like
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like he's awesome. Like I mean,
yeah,
shocker, Antonio Banderas, like
but he's
great
hit one of
actor, is
those
great in
things
a
where it's
movie,
like
but
there's only so many actors where it's like you're constantly trying to look for new faces, new blood, and it's kind of like he's always been talented. He never got
yeah,
untalented, but it's like he's kind of not been getting a lot of roles recently because he's just like it's like we've seen enough from him, sort of thing. Where it's like you're trying to get
yeah,
new faces,
and it's like
but he's a
hard
guy where it's
to
like
find
if
a
they just
role for
used
him at
him
this
more,
age.
yeah, it's like you hit a certain age where like I don't know what to do with you, guy.
Yeah,
But I think like he's always been incredibly talented.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I like everybody in the movie. It's I and it's like
yeah,
I don't
I think
even
it,
there's like moments in the movie where I was just genuinely having a good time.
yeah,
Like I was I was watching the movie with my girlfriend, and like there were like anytime like something would happen where like Nicole Kidman like kind of caves, you know what I mean? Where it's like she like doesn't want to do
yeah,
it, but then she does it anyway. I would kind of like cheer in my seat. I'd be like, let's go. And then because I'm like, I just want something to happen between them. But then
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, but that's like as fun as that is, like, what do I leave the theater with? It's like
exactly.
that's what I meant about Industry, where I'm like, I like watching Industry because that's like a
Mhm.
bingeable show. It's a good time. The characters do stupid shit that is wrong and it's risky and it's like fun to watch them have to like dig themselves out of these terrible holes that they put them in. But that's like that's like click, let's go to the next episode. And then like I move
Yeah.
on with my life. You know what I mean? And that's what this is. It's like if you slotted this in the middle of a season of Industry, I'd be like, that was a fun one. Next episode. And then
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
keep
yeah, right?
going. So it's like I like it enough because
Mhm.
it does all the things that I would enjoy out of like a bingeable TV show, but like
Sure.
it doesn't do any of the things that I would need out of like a great movie.
Yeah.
So it's like
No,
in
it's like it's
between
just like
those three things.
it's actually like, okay.
Yeah,
And
and
I think
I
it's
don't know. I guess it's mostly just that I'm disappointed because we didn't like we're going to talk about in a couple weeks our most anticipated movies of 2025, and when we did that at the beginning of the year for this year, like movies like Nosferatu got brought up, and movies like
yeah.
this were we weren't anticipating until we got closer to it. But then when we
Yeah, it's
did get
kind of
closer
picked up
to it,
steam.
yeah, when we did get closer to it, though, I was like, this is one of the movies at the end of the year that I'm the most excited for. There might have been, I might have even been more excited for it than I was for Nosferatu at some point, because it's just like, because it just seems so much like my speed. And part of it is that thing I'm talking about where it was like, oh, we're going to make like an adult movie, like a hot adult movie, and not just like a, you know, um, 50 Shades, which like is not really for adults, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like it's like these kinds of movies that are like that are hot just to be hot, as opposed to like they're
Yeah.
hot and then they also like play to an adult audience where like you could actually like watch them and think about them. And so don't market the movie like that to me when it's kind of not gonna end up being that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, and I'm not saying the movie has nothing to say. I think it's certainly more interesting than 50 Shades, but
Sure.
like, but I'm not gonna think about it like by next week. Like, it's like
Yeah, no.
and that's
Well,
my problem, is that I
it
thought it would
feels
be something
in a
else.
way where it's like, one, I think it probably needs like a another draft or two, but like it feels like they were like, okay, people are gonna be so kind of blown away, or like the sex scenes are so crazy that it's like they're gonna leave the theater and be like, wow, that was so crazy, right? And I
Yeah,
think if you don't think it like was like freaky and crazy, I think like it really starts to like you're like, okay, what else do I get
fall
out of
apart for
it,
you.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Because I never felt like that. I mean, like it's like
yeah,
there's like things. I'm like, this is cool. I get it. Like, she drinks milk. Okay.
yeah, but I drink milk all the time.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think Owen has such strong bones? It's like,
Get
I
on my
just
level, Nicole.
yeah, it's like
I do this shit for free.
I don't know. Anyway, but on the same subject of like the Robert Eggers thing, I think I wanted to bring up Helena Ryan, who
Yeah.
like made Bodies, 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 a movie that I think you liked a good amount. I don't think Doug
Was
really
it?
liked it that much,
Yeah.
but I thought it was
That's the thing,
fun.
is I
I think
think
you thought it
that
was
movie,
fun enough.
I think it's like a fun movie that it's like you're only gonna think about after, but it's like fun because it's like a interesting take, and it's like a
Yeah.
slasher with an idea, right? And that's all you kinda need to be. And I always was like, "Oh, this, uh, person, this director is just gonna make movies like where it's like they're fun movies or whatever, and they're like, Rachel Sennett vehicles or whatever, right? It's like just like a
Yeah.
silly movie. And then this movie came out or like was starting to get pushed and was getting pushed as like this big awards movie. And it was like this kind of prestige movie. And I was always kind of confused because it was like, oh, the bodies director is like trying to like shift into this like prestige
Yeah.
director thing, and it always confused me. But I was like, who knows? Maybe this like the script is really, I don't know. I don't. It's like it's one of those things where you only directed one movie or whatever, or like you're only a few movies. I think she
Yeah.
has more than one.
No,
But it's like, so I wasn't really from like you're not familiar enough. You only seen one movie. You're like not familiar enough with them as a talent to like really like be like okay, pin them down. But now it's like it's really interesting that was like the jump because I think they kind of had like this like low budget comedy like modern lens thing that they were kind of found a footing in that I think worked. And Bodies is just like it's like a fine movie. It's like whatever. But I think it kind of works more than this movie
yeah.
does because I think this movie is like reaching for something that I don't think at this point she's capable of doing.
Yeah, I think the thing that I was looking at that interests me a little bit more is that Bodies was not written by her. Neither was her first movie, which
Yeah.
seemingly is kind of similar even in subject matter to Baby Girl. It's at least like a sex-driven movie, but was not written by her. And then Baby Girl is the first movie she writes herself, and
Mhm.
so that's kind of my curiosity there is like, I wonder, I don't know, because it's like Bodies doesn't blow me away.
No, no,
But
no, no, no.
I don't know that she's going to be the type of person to make movies that do.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and I don't
That's
even
what
know. I mean, I feel pretty similarly about this movie to the way that I feel about Bodies. I think I like them like a pretty even amount. So maybe
yeah.
whether or not she writes the movie doesn't even matter that much to me.
Yeah.
If anything, though, I guess I wonder if maybe the best case for her would be to get a great script from a great writer and like
Yeah.
make a movie
I think
like
a lot of it
using the talent that she brought to these
I think
movie.
the baby girl-ness of, like, why it was pushed so heavily is because it was, like, Nicole Kid I think the cast
Yeah.
really, like, elevated it to, like I think, like,
Yeah, she's making, like, performance movies
different
almost.
cast, it, like, totally could have been, like, a streaming movie we never heard about.
Yeah.
Like, it's I don't know, I don't I just it's interesting that it got propelled to this kind of conversation and being, like
Yeah.
I think it being also December 25th and, like, kind of grouping itself with these other movies as well, it kind of became more, like and it just kind of it a really good, press on it and just kind of pushing it out as this, like, crazy movie. Because a lot
Yeah.
of people are talking about it and a lot of people are seeing it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really wanna say much more about the movie, and I don't want people to make it I think there's certainly gonna be people who are like, "Oh, you just didn't get it," or whatever, where it's like
Yeah.
there's like, where they think it's got more than it does, and I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying that I don't think what it does have to say puts it in any position to be a better movie than what I think it is. Like, I'm like, "This is, like, a solid movie." Sure, there's, like, interesting ideas in there about power and sex and
Yeah.
etc, but like none of that goes anywhere that like means a ton to me, so that's like really ultimately where I land on it. But I liked it. I mean, it was like fun, but I don't think I'll really be revisiting it ever. It's kind of similar to the Nosferatu situation, so that's that. Okay, we could probably wrap up there and talk about some news really quickly. Reminder, of course,
Yeah.
to share some feedback. Like, comment, subscribe, rate the episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us on all of our platforms. Make sure, of course, that you're following that Twitter so that you can leave your questions if you want. But news wise, we don't have a ton of stories, but we do have some big ones. So we might.
Touchdown, Josh Jacobs.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Thank the
There's your first
Lord. Thank the Lord.
there's your first
No.
bit of news. That might have been the dagger. I might have,
I
you
don't know.
know
It's close, man. It's really
it's
close.
close, but, like, my
Jo
problem.
what you have Jaden Daniels gonna drop like
Yes,
5
exactly. My
touchdowns and
problem is that, like, if the Commanders go nuclear tonight, all of a sudden I'm up, but
yeah.
But if they don't, that I mean,
No,
Baker
because
Mayfield,
you
35
have
points is
the what is it called when
crazy.
you have the 2 guys? It's like
A
it's like when you have
pair?
the quarterback and the receiver, it's
Oh,
like
yeah, I know.
the
Yeah,
stack.
stack, yeah.
You
Yeah,
have
there you go.
well, it's like
Yeah,
Jaden
so it's like if
Daniels, Terry
Jaden Daniels
McLaurin.
throws 3 touchdowns to Terry McLaurin, all of a
It's
sudden
like
I'm
you
beating you by
win.
30, but,
Yeah, exactly. So,
um
I've been, like, kinda worried the whole time, and I've still been, like, 70% win,
well,
and
I also have this wild card play where, like, I wanted to start Kenneth Walker at the flex, and then last
yeah,
minute, the Seahawks put him on IR, and so now I
yeah,
have Jawan Jennings, who
okay.
could score 5 points or could
Well,
score
bro,
40, and it's like
this is like they put CeeDee Lamb on IR, I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay."
I know. I
That
mean,
shit's so
we both got
that's,
screwed
like,
a little
so
bit,
fucked.
but
If David Montgomery and CeeDee Lamb were playing, I'd be like, "Oh,
yeah,
fucking."
yeah,
But I
no,
got
for sure.
Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford got hurt. I don't know what the fuck
Yeah, no, I think he
happened.
just sucks. He's just not very good. Okay, let's start with the piece of Robert Eggers news. I know it's not the biggest news, but because we talked about Nosferatu already, I feel like it's the natural place to start, which is that Robert Eggers is reportedly set to write and direct a new Labyrinth movie. I believe you've seen Labyrinth. I have not, but
Yeah,
and,
so
and
this
an,
is
an
like
additional part of this report is also that Willem Dafoe apparently has
yeah,
already been offered roles in his next 2 movies, so I assume this movie and some other one,
yeah.
if next 2 potential movies, so
Um,
I guess the
I
Labyrinth
think
thing isn't confirmed yet,
the
but
labyrinth thing is unlikely to happen.
yeah.
And I think I mean one is the source is the Insnider.
Sure,
Um,
yeah, so that's
and
not
two,
it's a shaky
it
one.
was and I think that is a ridiculous thing for Robert Eggers to do. I
Yeah.
think him adapting what is basically a Muppets movie with that stars what the fuck is his name? Um, oh my god, this is a horrible it
David Bowie?
stars yes. It's like a
I haven't
Muppets
even seen
movie.
the movie,
Yeah,
so
it's a Muppets movie starring David Bowie and like young Jennifer Connelly, and it's awesome, but like, what the fuck does Robert Eggers know about the Muppets? You know, it's like
yeah.
where it's like, is he gonna make like a realistic
Somebody
like
clip that. What the
it's
fuck does
like
Robert Eggers know about the Muppets?
it's like what the fuck is he gonna do? It's gonna be like this like dark, like super serious movie about like he can make a movie with a labyrinth and like do like a very similar thing. It just like seems like so like anti what he's doing because he's doing these like super also it doesn't make any sense because the whole thing is like realistic, like he's into like the the research, right? And he's into
Yeah.
the research of like a time period. And it's like a fantasy movie. But I mean, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people are gonna be interested in the idea of it because if you're interested in fantasy and like this kind of these time period
Oh, we're
pieces and stuff,
interested in fantasy.
you know, I think there's a direct I think there's a direct correlation to guy who likes Robert Eggers and like the Green Knight and stuff like that to
Sure.
person who likes the Labyrinth movie.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the kind of the for someone who grew up on movies like The Labyrinth and just fantasy movies like that. Um, I think what you happens is like now the modern fantasy movies like Game of Thrones and Nosferatu and like these darker kind of more realistic takes on it. I mean, it's kind of all we have. And so I'm like, if they were gonna remake a Labyrinth movie or like do a new Labyrinth movie, I would hope it would be like someone like fun, right? Someone with like little color in them
Yeah.
like I don't know who. The problem the problem is we don't really have a guy like that. Like a guy
Yeah.
who like is like he's a rainbow on his back or something. I just I just need like a little more like pop. Um,
Okay.
I don't know who that would be though because everyone we have is so like sad and like so serious.
Right.
But so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
Yeah, I
it's
don't have any
it's
opinions about this piece of news. I just thought I'd toss it
I
your
think it's a
way.
ridiculous.
So,
I think it's a ridiculous idea. I
um,
think Robert Eggers I think that's a crazy thing for him to do. But maybe this is how he makes his best movie is because he gets out of his like routine a little. Because I'm talking about like him having this like set way of like I this is how I'm gonna make a movie and I'm gonna make the same
yeah,
kind of movie over and over again. And maybe the Labyrinth is it's not a smaller movie, but it's a big movie that forces him to kind of make a different movie. And
yeah.
maybe that's what he needs. But as
Oh, almost had an Aaron Jones touchdown there.
yeah,
That
he
would
just
have
got some points.
that would have been big.
um,
Um,
but yeah, I don't know.
okay. let's not get too distracted. Our big piece of news this week, I guess for everybody, the biggest piece
Oh
of news.
yeah, I forgot.
Christopher Nolan's next film will be an adaptation of The Odyssey, an epic shot across the world using new IMAX film technology. It's going to be his biggest budget movie to date. I guess the previous biggest one was like 250 million, so we're probably looking at like
Yeah, Dark
300
Knight
million plus
Rises.
this time. We've already talked about the cast in previous episodes and all of the casting news. It's still that same cast, but now we just know the
Did you see the
subject of
Austin Butler thing?
the that he was almost playing Robert Pattinson's character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the Batman 2 maybe opened that up,
Yeah, I guess that's what happened there.
which is interesting. I'm interested in what that role is. It'd be that's definitely a conversation we'll have in 3 years of like, you know,
What would
this
have been if
yeah,
Butler was in that role
what
instead?
do you think about this performance and, like, would you have liked Austin Butler, or how do you think Austin Butler would have been different in this,
Right.
uh, thing? I'm interested in what that character is gonna be.
Yeah, it'll also be interesting when we get
It's a little
more of
sad
Butler's
for Austin
career as
Butler, like,
well.
that would
Yeah.
have been big.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Austin Butler will be okay. But
Yeah,
what
I'm
do you
sure we
think
won't.
about, like, the actual it being an Odyssey adaptation? Does this excite you more than the previous rumors, or does this disappoint you?
I'm sure Doug has opinions on this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't know. It's
They really
part of
gave it
it
to Cam Akers for a touchdown instead of Aaron Jones.
part of it is, like, it's bold. It's bold, it's also not bold at the same time. It's like, okay, this is gonna be a big deal, but it's also, like, it's almost it's gonna be like a kind of there's gonna be a fantasy, like, a fantastic element to it that, like, you have all these, like, monsters and these gods and stuff like that, that I'm interested to see. It's definitely a big thing to tackle, and it's gonna be the big movie of that year. But I don't know. I guess I was always pushing for that horror movie that I didn't think was ever gonna happen, and I'm still gonna always push for that. And I if Nolan dies without making a horror movie, I'll be a little upset. But I think this is interesting. I think it is interesting, but it's also something that was like you have to kind of wait and see that the day that the trailer drops, whether we're still on Twitter or we're still alive, I think it will be a big day for a lot of people. That trailer,
Yeah.
um, but as of right now, it's like it was kind of like, oh wow, on Twitter. But I think the next few months we'll get more and more information, and we'll soon know, kind of who's playing who. And a lot of people are going to be reading the Odyssey in the next year or two. And
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if Nolan is, you know, keeping literature alive for the children, I guess that's a
No, that's
positive.
important. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
apparently a lot of people don't know what it is, so
Yeah. No,
that's
I
a
mean, I think
different
as a
conversation entirely,
I think
but
as a public figure, I think it's important that Nolan teaches the children. I think that
yeah.
is it. I think that he's
No, I mean, I'm
he
excited. I mean,
he Nolan should just do like a every once in a while he'll just like announce, "Okay, I'm gonna do, whatever, The Great Gatsby next," and then he never has to
yeah,
do the movie, right? But he's just him
he
saying that
just
he's gonna
gets
do it,
people
and it's just
to
getting people to read, and
yeah.
I think that's
How long do you
powerful.
think it would take though before people catch on? He's like
Yeah,
he's
they're
like,
like, "Fucking this guy,
I'm
I'm
gonna
not
do
reading
Crime
other."
and Punishment," and then
Yeah.
and then it gets canceled, and they're like, "Maybe we should wait
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
before
yeah.
we read these books,"
I
and
don't know,
then
you
like
probably get a couple books to be read.
yeah. No, I mean, I'm excited. I like the thing for me is that like I really like what Nolan's doing right now. Oppenheimer was my favorite movie of that year. It kind of put Nolan in a place that I didn't think he would be in again for me. I didn't think I would like kind of do like circle back to him the way that I have, where it was like favorite director to like guy that I like less, and then now back to like one of my favorite. He's not my favorite director now or anything, but I mean, Oppenheimer puts him in a position where it's like I can't help but be excited for anything he does. But I think what really like kind of gets me here is that like not so much the material, but that the material is so grand because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it
yeah.
is just him getting essentially like
It's blank check.
his budget is going to be whatever he wants it to be.
Yeah.
So like because it will make the money back. And so it's like him being able to approach such a big story with as much money as he wants to dedicate to it, I think is going to be exciting kind of
Yeah, no,
regardless of what that story is.
it's
So
like a
like
landmark,
yeah.
like, cinematic event, really.
Yeah, I
It's
mean
like
it's gonna
a
be huge. It's gonna be a huge deal. Like it's like I can't imagine it not being. So that's my thing. Is like I'm excited on that front just to see
Yeah,
what it is that actually ends up coming out of it because like I who knows what this could mean. So that part for me is exciting, and it's like I do think it's cool material for him. I don't know if it's like the coolest direction for him to go in, but
yeah,
I think it's a logical direction is to take this big of a story and do something like make his like here's my fucking 3.5 hour long epic that I
yeah,
spent $400 million on or something. Like
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think it makes sense to use the material like material like that. So um, our next piece of news, I guess the last like big piece of news, the Batman 2 has been delayed by 1 year, now expected to release on October 1st, 2027. Oh, and obviously just mentioned this with the Robert Pattinson thing.
Yeah.
So it was previously going to be October of 2026. Now we have to wait until October. So almost the end of 2027. We're just starting 2025 now as this comes out. So almost 3 years until
Yeah, I'll be old enough to
uh
drive by then.
yeah. Okay. Until we get to see it. I'm gonna be honest, as somebody who loves the first Batman, this like meant nothing to me. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't really care. I'm like, I listen, am I gonna like the Batman 2? Fucking probably.
Maybe if you're around by
Yeah.
then.
Sure. But I'm getting old now. But
Yeah, you're gonna be like 40 when that comes out.
right. But it's like, but I'm still
You'll be like married with kids.
you know, I'm still excited for it without having to like be upset about it being delayed. You know, like it's like I'm
Yeah,
gonna be fine. Um, it's not like like when the Mickey 17 delays happened, which actually we're gonna talk about in a second. But when the Mickey 17 delays happened, I was like bummed because I was like, this is one of my favorite filmmakers as
yeah,
opposed to like this is a sequel to one of my favorite films. And so like I'm always excited to see what Bong Joon-ho does next. So I don't want that held back from me, but
yeah.
it's like there's no like mystery surrounding the Batman for me. It's like I know what I got from the Batman. I know what to anticipate for the Batman 2. And so I'm going to
The
get that.
Batman.
So I'm going to get that when you know what I mean? It's like I'm gonna get that whether it's
Yeah, I
in
mean, it's like, what are you
2026 or
gonna do, man? What are
2027.
you
Like
what's
it's
like,
like
what
it's
are you gonna do?
fine. I'm gonna have a good time
What are you gonna
regardless.
do? He fucking can't
Um,
write the movie. I don't know what it's like he's having a real big problem writing the Batman movie. It's like, what am I supposed to do about it?
um, Our last piece of news is just kind of a minor thing. We don't even really have to talk about it. But Mickey 17 and Sinners have switched release dates. Mickey 17 is now being
Yeah,
released earlier on March 7th, and Sinners is being pushed back to April 18th. Still not like that much of a gap. It's just like a few weeks, really. So I mean, who
yeah, I
cares?
mean, who
But
gives a
worth
fuck?
mentioning, I guess. Mickey 17 is a little bit sooner. Sinners gets a little bit more room for Kugler to uh, get it to us the way that it's supposed to. Because I think they said something about uh, something about it being shot on film
Yeah, they don't have, like, I don't
required
they don't
them
have
to
any,
there's
like,
like not a
fucking labs.
yeah, there's not a lab. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
So,
what the fuck is going
um
on here? Like,
yeah. Well, I think I saw somebody make this point, and I don't know if this is true because I don't know the specifics of like how many of them are available or whatever goes into it. But like, I think essentially what somebody said is not that they need to or that there's less labs like that they're disappearing or whatever, and more just like that more filmmakers are trying to like use film again,
yeah,
and as a result, there's just like less space for
we
everybody.
gotta build
So
more labs.
yeah, so I think if anything, they just need to increase the number of
We
labs.
gotta
I don't know that they've
build
been
bigger labs.
decreasing them, but anyway, I mean, it's whatever. This is like trivial stuff. It's like it gets pushed back 6 weeks. Another movie gets pushed forward 6 weeks. It's nobody's really hurt by it. We're still going to see both of those movies pretty soon. Both of them will certainly be covered in a couple weeks on our most anticipated of the year episode. Um, but that's that as far as news goes. We can kind of
That's
wrap
that.
up everything there. I want to let everybody know one final time about that Q&A thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Like
Yeah.
I said, Twitter.
When is this episode coming out? The
Uh,
31st?
yeah, this episode comes out. Yeah, the 31st. Yeah, so
Okay.
very last day of the
So
year.
I'll announce,
Um,
I guess that tomorrow, when if this is coming out on the 31st or whenever you're seeing this, I should be releasing, my new short film on the 1st of January. So you'll just have to go to my YouTube on that. And if it is the 1st of January when you're watching this, or if you've watched this yesterday and now it's the 1st, Just make sure I'll be posting something on Twitter. I'll probably go live uh sometime that day, and then after that live it'll be up. So I don't know what time
Yeah.
I'll be posting the actual film on YouTube, but you'll probably start seeing like Kevin and some other people log it, or whatever, before, earlier in the day. I'll probably send it out to some people earlier in the day, and then I'll go live on TikTok, and then it'll be available. So I just wanted to, for the podcast listeners, announce that here, because I have, I've talked about it a here and there, but I don't know if I've talked about a date yet. And I'm all the progress on certain things are going well, so we should be good for that January 1st date. So,
Yeah. And as somebody who has seen not the finished
yeah,
product,
the rough cut.
but close to it, I could recommend it as both a friend and a fan. I think people will like it. So definitely do that. Definitely leave those questions, like I said,
Yep.
Twitter, email, the comment section right on this video, wherever you're listening. Um, and that's about it. Next week we will be doing a 2024 year in review, best of the year, worst of the year, and everything in
And the all
between.
right.
Yeah, and just all right.
Yeah,
So
we'll just name
let's talk
every
about our
movie
top
we
10
said.
all right movies of the year. No, but yeah, 2024 year in review next week. And again, reminders for all that other stuff. We will
Yeah.
see you next week.
Episode 99.
Yeah, one away from 100.
I went on the YouTube studio thing, and it was like, "You've had this channel for 2 years," or something. It said that.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
wow. Look at us.
time flies, right?
Look at us. And look at you guys listening.
Look at you. We're
Yeah.
looking at you.
We'll see you later.
Looking sharp.